Carrie, Bob, any changes to the agenda?
There are no changes to the agenda.
Okay, is there a motion to adopt the agenda? Motion second, all in favor, aye? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Councilman Benton, would you like to speak?
Thank you. I won't make any jokes about last meeting. I'll be nice.
No joke.
Yeah, okay. So I'm here to speak in support of 2015 CP-012-002, the Southeast Community Plan Amendment, and also Cedarwood SP. We had many meetings in the community to discuss this project, and there was no opposition, so I'm here to speak in support of this. I know it's in the consent agenda, but I just want to make sure you all knew that I'm okay with it, and I think it's going to be a good project. That's it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Withers, you'd like to speak at this time? Okay. Councilman Davis? Any other councilman in the room that I've overlooked? Okay, thank you. We're going to have a Nashville Next update.
Thank you. Commissioners, Greg Claxton with the Metro Planning Department. I'm going to be giving you an update on the work that we've been doing on the capital improvements budget. This is a prelude to a work session that we're going to be asking for sometime in the next few weeks to delve into this in a little more detail. You'll recall that with the adoption of Nashville Next, we've been working to revamp the Planning Commission and Planning Department's role in selecting and prioritizing projects for the capital improvements budget. We've been working with Finance and now the Office of Infrastructure to promote long-term planning, effective and efficient spending, transparency, and alignment with long-term community goals. Just an update on a few things that we've been doing over the past couple of months. In November, we were part of an effort to send around a survey to all Metro departments on their capital planning processes and programs to gain a better understanding of how many of them have plans, what factors go into those plans, what additional information that they'd want on coordination, that sort of thing. On December 16th, we opened up WeBudget with Finance for the capital projects. WeBudget is the software that Finance uses to collect department requests each budget cycle. This was about a month and a half early because we were asking that to receive all projects for capital by tomorrow. That was intended to give us a couple of months from February through April to do our kind of first run at assessing projects for alignment with Nashville Next. Part of the reason we wanted to get started early was because our goal is to have a staff report and draft CIB posted to the website 2 weeks prior to the meeting where y'all will consider the CIB to forward that on to the mayor, which is happening at the schedule for the end of April by charter. You'll recall that this is part of a 3-year effort to get kind of really fully re-engaged in the capital planning process and to bring kind of all of our checks for alignment and coordination really into gear. This year we're focused on just kind of reconnecting with departments on their capital projects, checking out the assessment, doing kind of a scoring process, and seeing how that works. We don't expect to be recommending prioritized projects this year. That's going to something that we build to over the next 3 years. A big part of our effort the last 2 months has been working with departments, both through that survey and through a series of briefings that we've done the last couple of weeks to let them know where we're heading, get their feedback on that, and to let them know that we intend this to be a partnership as we develop this process. As an example of what we've done with the survey, we just sort of started very simply with, do you have a capital plan? And you can see that 9 departments said yes, 13 said sort of, which was an option we gave them. 8 said no, 12 said they don't have any capital projects, and 15 we haven't heard from yet. Which at first glance seems maybe a little bit dire. Many departments aren't really doing much capital planning. But when we connect that to the amount of spending in the CIB, you'll see that those 9 departments account for almost 3/4 of the capital projects in last year's CIB. So this is, we do very much have a planning-driven CIB right now. It's not quite being used to coordinate and project long-term, but departments have a sense of where they're going. One of our big emphasis points when we work with departments is really being clear that Nashville Next is a place for coordination. We see this as very much a two-way street, and one of the big opportunities we see right now is departments are going through a cycle of updating their own master plans. So I've put up 6 that we're working with right now. Either they're underway or they're about to get started, and we're looking for 2 big things out of this. One is linkages with Nashville Next, so kind of a sense of the growth pattern, the growth strategy, the preservation strategy identified in the plan should appear in their master plans. But then also, again, with the idea that it's a two-way street, if they identify things that need to be kind of reflected back in Nashville Next to be coordinated with other departments, we want to do that. We want to make those changes through the annual update process. And second, we want to make sure that they have clear linkages in their master plans with the CIB. And by that I mean, where we have a line item in the CIB, we want to be able to have a pretty direct way to find out, kind of where that shows up in the master plan, how that, decisions were made, what the priorities are, that kind of thing. With this mix of plan updates, we think we're going to get a really well-rounded view of all of the different kinds of projects that departments request. Another part that we were recommending was establishing a regular ongoing CIP meeting, just a point of coordination as projects actually get underway or are coming up in the near future. And one of the things that's exciting right now is that the Office of Infrastructure is really taking this up and leading. And so we've been talking with them about how we kind of gracefully shift from long-term planning, which the CIB and Nashville Next is for, to very on-the-ground immediate coordination where they're overseeing kind of who's digging which holes. As we get projects over the next few weeks and work with them over the next couple of months, our focus will be on checking alignment with Nashville Next. You'll recall we're looking at both the guiding principles, what kinds of things are we doing, are they taking us in the right direction, but then also the growth and preservation concept map to see geographically are they happening in the right place. As an example, we did a trial run with a set of scoring criteria where we said, okay, what does it mean to be Nashville, to foster strong neighborhoods? We developed these criteria and we did a trial run with about 200 projects from last year's CIB. We made some refinements and we'll be working with that set of criteria on this year's CIB. And our plan is, once this budget cycle is done, we bring those back to the departments and say, hey, this is kind of what we learned from checking your projects against Nashville Next. Does this sound right? Does it seem like we missed anything? Does it seem like we scored anything incorrectly? Because again, we are looking at this as something that's in partnership with the departments, not something where the planning department drops in once a year and says, not that project, yes, that project. I want to wrap up by talking a little bit more about work that we'll be doing next year, trying to think through some of these programmatic items, that projects that departments do over and over and over again. They're usually guided by a master plan, but they kind of show up in the CIB usually as more of an omnibus thing, such as the sidewalks program or the parks program. One of the things that we want to do is figure out, kind of what's the best level of information to get into in the CIB, where we have a clear sense of priorities that are being funded that may need multi-year commitments, and priorities that need a lot of coordination between departments or that pose an opportunity for coordination without getting into a point where every single segment of sidewalk that Public Works might build over the next 6 years needs to be detailed. So we'll be working to find the right balance of information. Then also looking really, really closely at the areas that need the most coordination for capital planning. These are primarily our centers, Tier 1 centers on the growth and preservation concept map, and then our transit corridors, and starting to think through, kind of how the planning for that works and how that shows up in the CIB, how it gets funded. And here we're, thinking maybe of sort of a portfolio of projects that draw on these things that we're already doing, but really says, okay, this is what the phasing needs to be. These are the projects that can help lead development and spur development of the kind and quality that we're looking for. These are the projects that would tend to follow that development. And how do we phase that out? And how do we fund it? And kind of how do we make a credible commitment that those projects are going to happen? So like I said, we'll be looking to schedule a briefing with work session with y'all to get into this in a little more detail, but I'm happy to take any questions that you have now.
Thank you, Greg. Any items for deferral or withdrawal?
Yes, there are several items for deferral, starting with item number 1, case number 2015S-001R-001. This is a request to amend the subdivision regulations pertaining to the rural character regulations. Staff recommendation is to defer to the February 11th, 2016 Planning Commission meeting. Item number 2 is case 2015 CP 0-001. This is a request to amend the Bordeaux Whites Creek Community Plan by changing community character policies for properties within 11 areas. Staff recommendation is to defer to the May 26th Planning Commission meeting. Next item is item 5, case 2016 SP-010-001. This is a request to rezone from RS5 to SP zoning for property located at 1023 Petway Avenue. Staff recommendation is to defer to the February 25th Planning Commission meeting. Next item is item 6, case 2015 S-174-001. This is a request for final plat approval to create 27 lots and dedicate easements on property located at 3606 and 3622 West End Avenue. Staff recommends deferral to the February 11th Planning Commission meeting, and I'll note on that item that Commissioner Blackshear is recusing herself. Item 10 is case 2016 Z-007PR-001. This is a request to rezone from RS20 to R20 zoning for properties located at 4101 and 4105 Leland Lane. Staff recommendation is to defer to the February 25th Planning Commission meeting. Next item is item 18. Case 2016 S-011-001. This is a request for final plat approval to create 3 lots on property located at 906 Youngs Lane. Staff recommendation is to defer to the February 11th Planning Commission meeting. And the last item under the deferrals is item 20, case 2016 S-025-001. This is a request for final plat approval to create 3 lots on properties located at 300 and 302 Manchester Avenue. Staff recommendation is to defer to the February 25th Planning Commission meeting.
Okay. Commissioners, you've heard the request from the staff to defer the following items, number 1, 2, 5, 6, 10, 18, and 20. Is there a motion to accept those for deferral? Motion second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Items on consent.
Before I get to the consent, as information for our audience, if you are not satisfied with the decision made by the Planning Commission today, you may appeal the decision by petitioning for a writ of cert with the Davidson County Chancery or Circuit Court. Your appeal must be filed within 60 days of the date of entry of the Planning Commission's decision. To ensure that your appeal is filed in a timely manner and that all procedural requirements have been met, please be advised that you should contact independent legal counsel. And as noticed to the public, items on the consent agenda will be voted on at a single time. No individual public hearing will be held, nor will the commission debate these items unless a member of the audience or the commission requests that the item be removed from the consent agenda. So as I read these into the record, just raise your hand if you'd like one of them removed from the consent. Starting with item 3A, case 2015 CP-012-002. This is a request for a major amendment to the Southeast Community Plan to change the community character policies from T3 Suburban Residential Corridor and T3 Neighborhood Center and Conservation policies to T3 Suburban Community Center policy for properties located on Nolensville Pike, at the corner of Nolensville Pike and Old Burkett Road. Staff recommendation is to approve. And I'll note on that item that Commissioner Blackshear is recusing herself. The associated zone change that goes with that one is item 3B, case 2015 SP-098-001. This is a request to rezone from AR2A to specific plan zoning for properties located at 6960 and 6968 Nolensville Pike and 7203 and 7235 Old Burkett Road to permit a maximum of a 5,200 square foot automobile convenience use and restaurant uses, and all uses permitted within the CL zoning district with some exceptions. Staff recommendation is to approve with conditions and disapprove without all conditions if the associated policy amendment is approved. I'll note on that item that Commissioner Blackshear is recusing herself. And next item on the consent list is item 4, case 2016 SP-001-001. This is a request to rezone from CS to SP zoning for property located at 311 Carter Street to permit up to 92 residential units. And the staff recommendation is to approve with conditions and disapprove without all conditions. Next item on the consent is item 8, case 2016 Z-003TX-001. This is a request to amend section 17.04 and 17.08 of the Metropolitan Code, the zoning regulations, to designate flex loan and installment loans as uses permitted with conditions, and adding conditions applicable to these uses. Staff recommends approval. And next item is item 11, case 2016 Z-010PR-001. This is a request to apply the provisions of the contextual overlay district to various properties located along Highview Drive and Lethia Drive in District 6 and 7, Council District 6 and 7. Staff recommendation is to approve. Next item is item 12, case 2016 Z-011PR-001. This is a request to apply the provisions of the contextual overlay district to various properties located along various streets in District 6, and staff recommendation is to approve. Next item is item 15, case 2016 NL-001-001. This is a request to apply the Neighborhood Landmark Overlay District to property located at 4909 Indiana Avenue. Staff recommendation is to approve. Next item is item 16, case 2002 UD-001-009. This is a request for a modification to the Green Hills UDO sign standards to allow 3 wall signs of 256 square feet each for the new Dillard's building for property located at 2140 Abbott Martin Road. Staff recommendation is to approve. Next item is item 17, case 2015 S-179-001. This is a request for final plat approval to create 3 lots on property located at 1909 Formosa Street. Staff recommends approval with conditions. Next item is item 19, case 2016 S-018-001. This is a request for final plat approval to create 5 lots on properties located on Ozark Street. Staff recommendation is to approve with conditions. And then under other business, item 21 is an employee contract renewal for Anita McKeag, and recommendation is to approve. And item 25 is to accept the director's report and approve administrative items.
Thank you, Bob. Commissioners, items on consent, or request to be on consent are items number 3A, 3B, 4, 8, 9, 11, 12, 15, 16, 17, 19, 21, and 25.
All but 9. 9 was removed.
9 was pulled, correct, okay.
And I'd like to know my recusal from 16. From 16.
16. Okay, so the items on consent then would be 3A, 3B, 4, 8, 11, 12, 15, 17, 19, 21, and 25. Is there a motion to approve those on consent?
16 is still on consent, though.
Is this still on?
Yes, she just recused herself.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. So item 16 is included in there, you're reclusing yourself from that. Okay. Got a motion and a second to approve those on consent. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Those items have now been approved, and the items that will be heard on public hearing today for the audience is number 7, 9, 13, and 14. All other items have been taken care of. Okay, people leaving.
Item 7 is a request to amend the zoning code for historic home events. If approved, this request would be countywide. Currently, the zoning code has a definition for historic home events, which defines historic home events means the hosting of events such as, but not limited to, weddings or parties for pay in a private home which has been judged to be historically significant by the Historical Commission. These uses are permitted by right in mixed-use districts, office districts, the ON, which is office neighborhood commercial districts, downtown code, and shopping center districts. They're permitted as a special exception in the agricultural, single and two-family residential, mobile home park, office neighborhood, and districts. The code requires certain conditions for special exceptions which deal with lot size, location, parking, signs, meals, owner occupancy, and frequency of events. The proposed amendment is intended to clarify where these events must take place within a structure determined to be historically significant by the Historical Zoning Commission. The addition to the definition is at the end and is underlined and adds clarity that the event must be confined to an enclosed area within a private home limited to the space between a floor and ceiling that is enclosed on all sides by solid walls or windows exclusive of doorways which extend from the floor to ceiling. As a policy standpoint, the proposed amendment provides a balance between supporting preservation of historic properties and the protection of surrounding neighborhoods. Therefore, staff is recommending approval.
Excuse me, this item's open for public hearing. The applicant will be allowed 10 minutes to make the presentation. And you may hold 2 minutes back for rebuttal if you'd like.
Thank you, Commissioners. I appreciate your patience as I was congratulating many of my constituents on working on 2 contextual overlays which passed on consent. And so that's a big achievement for many of them. They've worked on that a long time, and I appreciate your consideration while I offered congratulations to them on their efforts. I come before you today, Commissioners, as a representative of a district that includes a very large number of historic structures. I have a lengthy and well-known reputation of working and advocating for historic preservation. As a neighborhood leader and as a citizen, I have worked on numerous conservation overlay expansions, knocked on doors, talked to neighbors, also worked with the planning department staff as a volunteer on other efforts at neighborhood preservation, such as helping to generate support and input on the duplex bill and the contextual overlay bills. So I have a lengthy track record of working to preserve neighborhoods. And the first and foremost thing that I want to say is that some allegations have been made about me, and I need to dispel those, which are that I'm somehow attempting to shut down all historic home events in Davidson County, and nothing could be further from the truth. As a council member in a district that has a large number of properties that would qualify for a historic home event, it is increasingly a concern sometimes among my constituents in District 6 that while the protection of historic buildings largely has been accomplished in District 6 through overlays, not entirely but largely, that what is happening in some of our neighborhoods now is that there is an erosion of the residential character of the neighborhoods. And so as some of the increased events and desirability of the neighborhood come about, folks are sometimes just wanting to live in a neighborhood in certain spots. Certainly East Nashville participated very extensively in the Nashville Next process. I did as a neighbor and as a volunteer. Many of our neighborhood leaders and members did as well. And certainly in the Nashville Next process, there was a there is a long history in East Nashville of trying to find a specific place where commercial activities can coexist with residential. Those have been very meticulously planned where that commercial can exist. But at the same time, there was a lot of interest in preserving the residential character of the remainder of those neighborhoods. And so, as you see through the wide adoption of the neighborhood maintenance policy, both in the historic neighborhoods and even in some of the suburban neighborhoods. So that is an overall concern that I think many of my neighbors have. Certainly, we welcome our historic home events. We welcome our historic bed and breakfasts that have gone through processes that have been in place for a long time, and see those as an asset. But at some point, there is an effect on the residential character of a neighborhood that can be eroded when you have very, very large numbers of guests that are coming in and out of an area. And some of those concerns include, but are not limited to, noise as well as parking. And so what has started out as a preservation tool for historic houses approximately 15 or maybe even closer to 20 years ago in an area where we were facing demolition or demolition by neglect. We are now not experiencing that in our historic neighborhoods. We are experiencing transformations of residential buildings to almost explicitly commercial uses. And at some point that does have a deleterious effect on neighborhoods. So one of the things I wanted to reference is just that, there have been numerous attempts to address the historic home events language over the years. Not all of them have passed necessarily, but there are some common themes that emerge, and one of those is how do you allow that use to coexist with residential neighbors who may not necessarily want to feel like by going in their backyard that they are a part of your event whether or not they want to be. And so one of the issues that has come before the Board of Zoning Appeals is the definition of historic home events, and the definition seems to indicate that events shall be within a historically significant structure as determined by the Historic Zoning Commission. And so there has been a pretty interesting dialogue or discussion about what is the meaning of the word within a historically significant structure as determined by the Historic Zoning Commission. So this ordinance that I brought forward today really seeks to do two things. One is to bring clarity to that definition of what within means, and also to help to bring about consistency of application with the various historic home event properties that exist. Some have a renewal of 2 years, some have a renewal of 15 or 20, some may or may not have a renewal at all. There is a wide degree of variation in those, and I don't necessarily think that in and of itself is a bad thing, but the lack of clarity of definition has really been a problem that our city has faced. This has been a matter of quite a bit of debate that has split neighborhoods with regard to historic home events. It has split neighborhoods. It has brought people before the Board of Zoning Appeals for very lengthy battles. It has caused, in some cases, litigation. I believe that having a definition that, since this is so broadly applicable, that having a narrow definition actually is beneficial, that bringing a clarity to that definition of what within the historic structure means is beneficial, and also bringing consistency of application of that will also be beneficial. In the duration of time since historic home events were created many years ago, the planning department staff have worked hard with the Metro Council and have created some additional tools that weren't around at that time, such as neighborhood landmark, specific plans. Many of those things never existed in the past. There are also better permitting processes sometimes for outdoor events, such as the recent creation of the small outdoor music event venue that is also available through the code. And so it is my belief that since so much of the disagreement that I hear or have observed with historic home events, particularly in urban neighborhoods that are characterized by a large number of historic structures, a lot of that dispute pertains to the fact that they are outside of the historic structure. And when you go back to the definition stating that events shall be within a historically significant structure, I think that it is apparent that by going outside of the historically significant structure, structure, we invite quite a bit of controversy that is problematic for our neighbors who live next door and aren't certain what to expect, but is also problematic, frankly, for the venue operators themselves. If that definition is not clear, then that could open them up to getting a denial in some cases. Certainly, you could have guests that have booked a contract to use that venue, and if that definition in and of itself is so unclear that that is a cause of instability, both for those event owners as well as for our neighbors. And so I submit this to you as a proposal to keep historic home events widely available to any number of the properties in my district that would qualify under historic zoning in particular, but to take steps to ensure that the events do in fact remain within the historically significant structure, and that for those who need events outside of the structure as part of their business model, that they have other tools to do that. I'm certainly willing to continue working with everyone on ways forward, but I foresee that this will be a big issue going forward. So with that, I close for now. Thank you. I'd like to retain my time.
Others in the audience wish to speak in support.
Support, Mr. Chairman, members, thank you. I always wonder when I come to occasions like this, why am I here? And so I take that definition, 1716-160B2, and it says the events shall be within the historically significant structure. But if this is a parcel of property, this is the historically significant structure, then we all know that the event's got to be within the cut. I've done that demonstration over 100 times. At Walmart, the grocery store, my local bar. Every time I ask somebody to pick the location, they pick the cut. The only entity in this city that doesn't pick the cut is the Board of Zoning Appeals. So that's why we're here, to tell the Board of Zoning Appeals exactly what this cut plainly describes. Thank you.
Any others wishing to speak in support? Seeing none, anyone wishing to speak in support, please come to the microphone. If you're going to speak, line up behind each other so we can conserve time. If you give us your name and address, please.
I'm Carol Williams. I live at 800 Russell Street in historic Edgeville. I've been there for 40 years. I support this ordinance to clarify historic home event zoning. It's not about a single specific venue, it's about clarification. The original purpose of the ordinance has been lost through inconsistent rulings from the BZA. No longer homeowners need help saving a structure, but investors who buy inexpensive structures then wanting to turn them into commercial venues. Clarification is desperately needed for our neighborhood. The quality of life in a residential neighborhood is directly affected by a regular outdoor amplified entertainment. Next to me, there are investors, not homeowners, wanting to apply for this zoning. Hasn't happened yet, but I've already been contacted about it. I'm asking you to follow the intent of the original ordinance and allow events only to occur within the historic structure. We now have 13 children on my block between South 8th and South 9th. Most of them are preschool age. Regular outside amplified entertainment within our residential neighborhood boundaries is problematic. We have 50-foot by 150-foot lots, and we're 5 feet from the next neighbor. It's time for clarification so the BZA will no longer flip-flop on their historic event decisions.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Michael Kraling. I live at 1201 Holly Street, about 100 or 150 feet from a historic home where events are conducted. And I just rise to tell you that when that structure became a historic house, we, the neighbors, met with the owners several times to hash out a policy that would fit both the business function of the house and the residential quality of the immediate neighborhood. It worked. It wasn't easy, but it worked, and we have coexisted for several years under those rules. And I hope that you will vote to approve the clarification of the language here. I have to say, I've been teaching English for 40 years, and within is always meant within the structure, and I hope you will vote again to approve this text amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in support? Seeing none, anyone wishing to speak in opposition?
Mr. Chairman, if I can have these handed out before I begin here.
Let's reset the clock a second.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, my name is Tom White. My offices are at 315 Dedrick Street. And I have a simple request before the commission today, and that is there ought to be a condition that this proposal, this text amendment proposal, would only affect new properties, that is, not properties that currently have been allowed by special exception of the Board of Zoning Appeals. My client in this case is East Ivy. They're located at 209 South 5th Street. Historical structure built in approximately 1868. And here's the issues that we have. With this particular issue, the proposal as enacted by the councilman basically put my client out of business. You can look at the pictures that we've got. We have 90% of our events are wedding events. They're outside. They're well received by the community. We've checked with the codes department and with the zoning administrator. There have been one complaint about my client's operation in the 24 months we've been there. With respect to a definition of historic, when these issues have become before the Board of Zoning Appeals, here's what has taken place. Historic sometimes has said that, in our case, the property itself is historic. There's a wall all the way around the property. It's recognized, it's preserved, it's a great sound barrier. It's there. And in our particular case, that's what the board decided. In some instances, they did not. But of the 5 historic home events in Nashville right now, at least 3 of them have events that are outside, approved by this board. Now, here's my equitable argument here. My client appeared before the Board of Zoning Appeals a little over 2 years ago. The whole history of the preservation by special exception is to make sure that these homes are protected. My client spent more than $500,000 documented money to Metro government to preserve the facility. They've done that, incredibly well received. This would put them out of business. So at a minimum, there ought to be a condition enacted here that this would not apply to the current 5 historic homes, that it may well apply to those in the future, but not to those that currently have relied on what Metro approved in a 5-0 vote in my client's case. We urge you to make that a condition. On inclusionary zoning 2 weeks ago, this board was greatly concerned about what would happen to people caught in the middle. Vested rights, where are they? There can't be any clearer case than this where someone's relied on what was in place, and clearly we're asking that we, quote, be vested or grandfathered in, only applicable prospectively. Thank you for your courtesies.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Ed Clay. I'm one of the owners of East Ivy Mansion. I've lived there for 3 years. We made the investment on the property based on the ruling of the Board of Zoning Appeals. That's when we made the investment in all of the improvements. We want to make sure it went through before we did that. East Ivy is one of the, in my opinion, one of the nicest wedding venues in Tennessee. We have over 50 weddings booked for 2016. So it's like, what are we going to do? We're going to tell them that we can't do this anymore all of a sudden? So that bothers me because, we have a commitment. And we haven't had any complaints in 2 years that were verified. We had the cops called one time. I was outside, and I had them walk the property. No sound complaint. They didn't write us anything. We were told afterwards that there had been 4 complaints. I called Sergeant Fisher. He's our neighborhood liaison, and he said there were not 4 complaints. There were 1, and we were not in violation. So I'm just asking you to grandfather all the historic home event venues in. I think it's very unfair for someone to come and do business in the city, and I've lived here for 34 years, went to Overton High School, but for someone to come do business in the city and be granted permission to do that business and then have somebody just take it away. And that's effectively what this bill does. I'm not against the bill overall as long as we're grandfathered in. It creates a win-win. They win because the rest of the city doesn't have these things that could be right next door. Our property has walls blocking most of the sound. Our speakers are pointed onto South 5th Street, which is a 4-lane street, so it's not like it's going to the neighborhood. So I would just ask you to consider grandfathering us in, and actually all the historic home event venues in. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen of the board, thank you for having me. My name is Kobe Sherlock, and I also reside at 209 South 5th Street, and I'm the acting general manager for the East Ivy Mansion. And it's been a pleasure to work for the property, and honestly, it's been a pleasure to be, working with some of the neighbors that have really spoken out in support of us. And I really want to ask the board to please not be blinded by the request of clarity and the focus on this clarification of the law and how it impacts us in the long run. We are already existing, and we have done nothing more than acted in good faith in the bounds that were set by us. We're talking about 2 years of a lot of rules that we had to follow, and we put a lot of stress on these brides, these grooms, and things to follow within the bounds that we were asked, and we have done an excellent job doing so. We've gotten praise from a lot of our neighbors. I spoke with one that is the closest neighbor affected by sound today. She also provided us with a letter of support that we did take with us to the Board of Zoning Appeals, and we will have present again on February 4th when we have to sit there again. But her name is Miss Geraldine Walton, and she is one of the sweetest ladies and lets us know directly that this sound does not affect her, and we have not had any formal complaints. As Mr. Clay said, I reached out to the East Precinct. We have never had a formal complaint. We are also very much available. I'm always on the property. So if our neighbors have ever had any issues, I highly encourage to reach out. So I do ask that you consider the impact on the already pre-existing businesses, and that you look in the favor of the opposition today in our efforts to make sure that this bill does not pass as written, unless you would consider allowing our councilman to add that of an amendment that would, of course, consider grandfathering in the 3 current or however many current pre-existing businesses that are affected by this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Jessica Mrozinski. I live at 430 Burgess Drive. I work with Dream Events and Catering, and I'd like to read a letter from one of the brides whose wedding we're catering at East Ivy. My name is Major Raven Bukowski, stationed at Fort Campbell. I am a 4-time combat veteran who has chosen with my fiance Alex to support the city of Nashville by hosting my wedding there this September. Our decision will bring over 130 visitors to your great city. I've personally invested thousands of dollars, which is a lot for a service member marrying another service member, in local Nashville vendors, supporting the city's growing economy. I implore you not to reconsider passing ordinance number BL 2015-96, which would effectively shut down our wedding venue, East Ivy Mansion. In less than 30 days, I head overseas for my 2nd combat deployment in 1 calendar year. My fiance and I, an infantry officer stationed in Fort Lewis, Washington, has miraculously accomplished about 90% of our wedding planning in the last 3 months. If the use of East Ivy Mansion is denied to us, we will have no choice to cancel our wedding. While deployed and with my fiance fully immersed in Army training elsewhere, and with all of our family members living out of state, there will be no way to reschedule the most important event of our lives for our date of September 4th, 2016. What's more, Alex and I will not have another opportunity to tie the knot until late 2017 due to our Army commitments and assignments. We have already put down nearly $16,000 in deposits towards this event that we run the risk of losing altogether. This would not only bring significant financial hardships to a new military family, but be devastating to both us, our parents, and our friends. Consider the other families who have planned to celebrate life, love, family at beautiful historic Nashville locations like East Ivy. These venues possess charm, character, and tell a story like the city of Nashville itself. Please do not ruin our special days. Do not ruin Nashville's strong relationship with its neighboring military community. Make the right choice when considering this ordinance. With sincere regards, the bride-to-be, Raven Marie Bukowski, Major, United States Army, Fort Campbell, Kentucky.
Thank you.
Hey folks, I'm Jamie Lane, 5613 Valley View Road. I work at East Ivy and have really had the pleasure of seeing the property evolve into what it is today. We have become one of the most popular venues in town, as well as a top destination wedding location as well. Our max capacity is 250 people, so think about 250 people flying into Nashville. They're going to do hotel room blocking. They're going to have a rehearsal dinner. They're going to, go to lots of restaurants. They're going to enjoy nightlife, shopping, etc. We're definitely making the local economy boom, I think, from the tourist standpoint. This bill would definitely shut down our venue 110%. The way the property is laid out, we are definitely an outdoor venue and do not have the interior space to host these events. With that being said, that means I lose my job. My husband loses his job. He's our in-house photographer, and that means that we have to pull our kids out of private school. This is one story out of so many people that this affects. Events take a lot of people and a lot of work. Wedding planners, day of coordinators, caterers, wait staff, bartenders, florists, cake makers, DJs, bands, ceremony musicians, officiants, rental companies, lighting companies, tinning crews, ballet, transportation shuttles, vintage cars and limo providers, cleaning crews, maintenance staff, lawn care. It goes on and on and on. These are a lot of jobs, y'all. This is a lot of people. I just beg of you to really think about how this will impact our economy, jobs, and then the brides that are already booked. For me, that's the hardest one. 40 to about 50 brides already booked that love our property, and girls dream about their weddings from the time they're children. To deprive these brides of their opportunity is deplorable. I beg of you guys to really think about the impact that this will have on everyone. Thanks.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is John Yates, 139 North Timber Drive. I'm a local small business owner of Celador Wedding Photography, and I'm here representing over 320 of my fellow wedding and event professionals who have signed a petition asking this commission to deny this request for this amendment. I'd like to read some of the comments from this petition. Megan says, this proposal to exclude outdoor activities at Nashville's historic venues just doesn't make any sense. I toured a few of these venues when planning for my upcoming wedding, and the outdoor atmosphere and beauty is generally unmatched. Most, if not all, of the venues in historic homes affected by this already have contracts in place to preserve the historic nature of their property and ensure that any noise or music is ending within city noise pollution guidelines. Without a clear and valid reason for suggesting this proposal, I can only see this as damaging local Nashville businesses, taking away from the Nashville economy, and forcing people organizing weddings and gatherings to look outside of our great city for another venue. Julie writes, what would this do to our city if this happened? Do you realize the money this brings in for the city of Nashville? Most of these weddings and events are destinations where the guests come and stay all weekend and spend money in Nashville. Plus, think of all of the other Nashville vendors you would affect. This is wrong. Benny writes, I thought the purpose of your councilman was to help his district, not the opposite. His bill, if passed, will directly affect other districts as well. What purpose does he have to put folks out of business and destroy the wedding plans of people who have already committed to having their wedding at these historic homes? Mason writes, would hate to see a great venue hindered by this bill. They are very aware of their neighbors and even enforce a decibel limit on events. Please, I would ask for you all to vote no on this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello. I'm Debbie Cogswell, and I live at 1416 Eastland Avenue. I've been a resident there for 31 years, and I am the mother of a groom that is planning a wedding at East Ivy in June, and him and his bride have had a contract with East Ivy since June of last year. They're in their mid-30s. It's their first wedding. They're very excited, and I am asking that you heed the request of the council for East Ivy, that you grandfather in that venue and the other existing venues that already have permits to practice. It would be we are blindsided by this, and it would be a breach of contract, and I think unethical to ask these families to change the plans. I mean, really, it's impossible to change the plans at this point. Our weekend that we're going to have our wedding happens to be the CMA Festival weekend. So speak of noise, there will be noise, but it won't be from the wedding. It will be from the Ascend Theater that we have to put up with the boom, boom, boom all the time in East Nashville, and the traffic from the Nissan Stadium we have to put up with. We have to put up with the Nashville filming of inconveniences and other commercial and film inconveniences. And East Ivy does not present any of those inconveniences. And I beg you, please, as just a common person that's going to have a wedding, that you heed the request to grandfather them in. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Robert Higginbotham. I'm a musician here in Nashville. I live at 865 Bellevue Road. I play classical guitar for ceremonies. I own the website NashvilleWeddingGuitarist.com. I've performed at over 400 wedding ceremonies in the greater Nashville area over the last 10 years. Cedarwood is one of my biggest clients. I typically play there about 40 weddings each year, and I would say out of those 40, 38 of them are outside. Out of those 38, probably a good 17 of those are destination weddings from other cities. That's hundreds of thousands of dollars of income to Nashville that we would be losing if this bill goes through. I would highly recommend grandfathering in Riverwood, East Ivy, and Cedarwood. They've invested so much money in their businesses that to do anything else would be just terribly wrong. I would actually say, going beyond that, to just reject this out of hand, because I would like to see Nashville grow as a destination wedding central. It has been growing particularly over the last 5 years. I've been paying attention to this as part of my income, and there are more and more destination weddings coming into Nashville. If you keep the wording of this bill that will keep garden weddings from being able to be performed in historic places, that's the majority of the weddings that I perform. I just really hope that you will reconsider either approving this or grandfathering in the existing historical special events. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name's Nathan Wright. I'm one of the owners of Cedarwood. I apologize to the board for my fear of public speaking, but we've been in business for 9 years, having events at Cedarwood without one single complaint. I would have to disagree that the appeal of a historic home is within the walls of the home. Cedarwood sits on a little less than 50 acres, and part of the appeal is the outdoors, the old fence, the stacked rock wall that has been there for over 100 years, and the grounds are a big appeal and part of the historic nature of the facility. As Rob said, at least 40% of our weddings are destination weddings, so you're talking about thousands of people per year just at Cedarwood alone that have come into Nashville, staying a lot of times the entire weekend, and not only attending the wedding in Nashville, but attending other things in town. So I would just like to request that this board please either reject this bill or at least give an exemption to the ones who have put so much hard work and sweat equity into what they have built so far. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Karen Wright, part owner also of Cedarwood. And, as one of our owners, as Nathan said, we have been in business for 9 years. We've provided jobs for employees and many local vendors, as other people have mentioned. We have helped build Nashville into a destination city, which we have gained international goodwill from Cedarwood events that have been published online, both in the U.S. and abroad. And while part of all of our events at Cedarwood are within the historic farm, people love our beautiful Tennessee outdoors, and that is one of the main reasons for choosing Cedarwood, and indeed probably the other venues as well. Many couples, especially those that come from cities like Chicago and New York, they are looking for an outdoor experience. That's what they want. And the historic house is really just part of the overall package. Cedarwood events, we only learned of this last night at 4 o'clock, and that's a little troubling that, we have not been contacted about any problems, or, no attempts have been made to contact us to solve any perceived problems, and that's, a little concerning. But anyway, I vote, of course, to either disprove this entirely, or to, just to realize that the entire property is also part of the historic nature of most of these venues. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you to the board. My name is Haley Weber. My residence is 2828 Bronte Avenue in District 7, and I, unlike the other individuals who are on the business side of things, am one of the people writing the checks. I am one of the many brides-to-be that is currently under contract at a historic home event venue. Earlier this morning, I submitted a letter to the Planning Commission, which I respectfully ask that you take the time to review before making any decision. I encourage you to consider the economic impact of effectively shutting down these spaces by making them less attractive to couples like myself. The economic impact starts with the people they employ losing their jobs, some of whom have been there for more than 10 years, as well as the loss of thousands of dollars by anyone who has a wedding booked there that may no longer be able to use the space. Neighborhood bars, restaurants, and hotels will lose out on the revenue and foot traffic that these venues bring to our neighborhood. Nashville is one of the top 5 wedding destinations in the U.S., and we cannot afford to lose out on this industry, as it is a top dollar and high demand industry. Many couples, like myself, may be forced to look elsewhere for a space rather than putting money back into our neighborhood like we had originally planned. The existing venues will end up in an endless quagmire with contracts already signed, deposits already made, and given this amendment is to take effect immediately upon passing, a lot of angry brides. It would be hard to survive the chaos that will ensue without considerable expense and client dissatisfaction. I respectfully ask that you amend the ordinance to include a clause for grandfathered venues and contracts already in existence. I can understand the concern about new venues, also parking and sound, but there are other venues with which to deal with those obstacles like permits and other ordinances that can take place rather than shutting these businesses down. To end, I live in East Nashville. I want to get married in East Nashville. I love my neighborhood, and I want to put my money back into it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Sunny Bex. and I reside at 1515 Forest Avenue, and I'm a little bit different because I am not a bride. I'm already married, pedestrian bridge, and I don't have any children getting married, and I have no dog in the fight with reference to the historic homes. I have been visiting Nashville since 1972 when I was born. I have family here. All I knew of Nashville was East Nashville, Ivy Drive, Gallatin Road, Dickerson Pike, Trinity in the 70s and the 80s. If you told me that I was going to be buying a house and raising children in East Nashville, I would have told you you were out of your mind. My mother begged me in 1998 to come look at Nashville because it was different. I lived in Boston. Boston's a totally different city from Nashville. I moved anticipating my move again in a few years. Nashville would not be a place to stay. Year after year after year, I stayed because the city grew. More things were happening. I bought a house in East Nashville when the couples were moving out with their kids. When I walked into 5 Points, the Johns were circling the corner thinking I was a working girl. Businesses were starting and going out of business within 6 months. I'm a small business owner. I run a hula hoop shop. Yes, in East Nashville, we thrive. We have people that come in from out of town all the time putting money into these stores like mine, these quirky little stores. And for you guys to look at not dealing with a grandfathered clause versus saving the historic homes, I get that. Save the historic homes, protect the people going forward, but don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. I mean, everybody made a big mistake with the tall and skinnies, but you're not asking those people to move out or tear down their home just because you decided it was a bad idea. I don't think it's fair for you to do that to these venues that are already existing businesses. It is not fair to shatter them. I'll end with the fact that I have a 23-year-old who wanted to leave Nashville too. She left Hume Fogg, she went to Parsons in New York, moved to LA, just came back, trying to convince her boyfriend to move here to open his restaurant. That's how awesome Nashville is. Keep it that way.
Thank you.
Good evening, Commission. My name is Micah Robinson. I'm a local photographer, and I represent several hundred wedding professionals and locals as well that couldn't be here tonight. I'm a Nashville native, and young lady's right about Nashville being a destination spot for weddings. We're actually in between number 1 and number 3 in the nation for weddings. There's over 28,000 weddings that happen every year in Nashville and the surrounding Nashville area, Middle Tennessee. And each one has a budget of just over $29,000. So it's a multi-$100 million industry in Middle Tennessee. You'll be taking a good chunk out of that with approving this, so I ask that you do disapprove it. There is the reason why nobody's really gone over this, but these antebellum homes are a huge draw because of their history and because of their beauty. But the issue with having weddings and events inside the homes is that they're very small rooms that can typically only hold about 50 people. So whenever people want to have a wedding and have 250 guests, it's not an option to have it inside an antebellum home at that point. That's why it has to go outside out under a tent or something like that. There's already ordinances in place for decibel levels that you can absolutely enforce. There's ordinances in place for where you can and cannot park on the streets and vice versa. So I just ask that you disapprove it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Danielle Worley, and I own Nashville Suites at 803 Woodland Street in East Nashville. And this is Danielle Godin, and she works for us. We're a small business. We've only have a few employees, but we've been in business for about 5 years, and nearly half of our revenue is from weddings alone. And almost all of that revenue comes from referrals from fellow vendors, from venues and planners of that nature. As an outside vendor, I feel like we work closely with these venues to be accommodating to all of their rules and all of the guidelines that they have set in place. We certainly don't want to violate anything, but we do have contracts booked through the year, and this would have a huge impact on us as well as other small businesses like us trying to make it in East Nashville. So I'd ask that you would disapprove, at the very least, would grandfather in the historic homes that we already have a great relationship with. I would also like to speak in favor of these venues and hope that you at least grandfather them in. I moved to Nashville almost a year ago because of these draws, and now I live here. Now I work for a small business, which I absolutely love. I would hate to see these brides have their wedding date taken away. We're also contacted by Raven Bukowski. I feel her pain. I work with these brides every day, and I would hate to see this taken away from them. I also would hate to see a business in these venues essentially shut down and lose, their living. So I ask you guys to consider this when considering this ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Nathan Weinberg. I live on 3944 Moss Rose Drive in East Nashville. I also own a business in East Nashville. But I'd like to talk a little bit about the fabric of East Nashville and how unique it is as a community within the city. East Nashville is... The reason that I moved to East Nashville was because it didn't count itself as an exclusive place. It counted itself as an inclusive place. And that was not just for the residents of East Nashville, but also for the businesses. It counted on the inclusivity of that community to draw unique, interesting businesses like hula hoop shops to come in and rejuvenate a community that not 10 years ago was a fixture on the show Cops. And so today, to be able to have my son go to one of the very best public elementary schools in the city that sits in East Nashville, to be able to see beautiful, beautiful architecture, to be able to see unique businesses grow and thrive in the largest residential geographic block in Nashville is so exciting. And I believe that stifling unique businesses specifically like these in any way, shape, or form is really to the detriment of the inclusivity that East Nashville in particular represents. So I'd implore you to think about the character and the fabric of this very unique community despite its size and disapprove this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Deborah Sutton, 1833 Welcome Lane. I am owner-partner with Riverwood Mansion. I have to apologize, I was not prepared to speak today, for I myself did not know this was going to be happening today either until last night, like Cedarwood. I want to come to you all and just express our understanding of needing to have an absolute definition, but each venue, each historic home is a very unique situation. Moving forward for future historic event homes, I can understand having a box to put them in. But because of the way the zoning has approved in the past, it makes it difficult now to judge us all as the same because we are different. At Riverwood, we do have parking for 300 plus on site. Some of the other venues, that's not an option for them. However, they were granted the ability to have an event. Doing all of the functions or events in the mansion itself for us would be detrimental to the structure. We've been there since 1790s. It has always been known as an event house. The Birches, the Coopers, entertained 7 different presidents in that home. That home was always known as an event home. And to come in and potentially take that away from us, I hope that you can look past what's been done in the future, grandfather it in. We're willing to work with you and uphold the rules that we were given. And we just really hope that you can see that and know that we're giving to the community every way that we can.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hello,
Hello, my name is Councilwoman Nancy Van Rees up in District 8. I live at 209 Marlin Court. I wanted to let you guys know that this will not be an 8-hour night, we promise. I apologize for not getting here earlier to voice some of my thoughts in regard to this. I respect Councilman Withers and his intent. However, I've heard the phrase grandfathering a little bit too much, and I wanted to make sure that you knew that on behalf of District 8, in particular with the Madison area, that there are future opportunities for historic homes and events in this nature, and we wanted to make sure that you understood that this actually does affect the entire county, and I don't want to stifle any potential opportunities in the future. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Hi, Scott Barker, 3804 Williamette Drive. We heard tonight Councilman Brett Withers mention worries over parking and noise and not enough clarity to the existing code that's already in effect. Noise ordinances and those codes that go along with that are already in effect today, and all of these venues follow those. Parking is more than substantial at these venues. As a matter of fact, most of them have had to remove part of the grounds that could otherwise be used for other things to accommodate parking for their guests. Many of these historic venues are only up to code and available to the public simply because they are able to operate the venue to include weddings and events for the revenue that it brings in. My wife and I are wedding photographers, and we would include ourselves in that revenue that gets brought in. We shoot 40 to 50 weddings a year, half of them probably being at historic wedding venues. We're talking about jobs and tax money and revenue that would otherwise not be coming into the city and to families in our areas, families with children that this money provides for them to take ballet lessons and go to private schools and to afford the things in life that maybe we didn't get as kids. Within the wording of the amendment, it should include the property grounds because the property grounds are also often historic. I ask that you deny and disapprove this zoning code, and at the very least, an amendment to exclude properties that are already a current venue and operate in that capacity and grandfather them in. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, I'm Derek Couts, and I just want to address the issue of clarity. I just want to clarify that if this is to pass, you will be destroying some jobs, and I want to clarify that you will also be destroying the reputation of Nashville for its for the reputation of the weddings that are here. You will also be, forgive me, I just want to clarify that there is a vast majority that is against this than what there is that is for it.
Thank you.
One more. Thank you, Board. My name is Bo Jennings. I reside at 204 Cude Lane. I just wanted to speak on behalf. I am Director of Events for CHG Special Events here in Nashville. I'm also the President-elect of the International Special Events Society and our chapter here in Nashville. And on behalf of hundreds of thousands of event professionals around the world, we ask that you do not approve this legislation. The legislation comes from a good place, and we appreciate the thought through it. But again, we believe that the jobs that will be affected, the brides that will be affected, I can promise you, you do not want a bride coming to your door crying. Even worse, you did not want the mother of the bride. But again, we just ask that you consider that. Again, the jobs, the brides, the corporate events that come to town, we just ask that you consider that. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? The Councilman, you'd be allowed 2 minutes for rebuttal if you'd like.
Thank you so much, Commissioners, and I definitely appreciate everyone who came out to speak today. I've gotten many phone calls and emails in the last 2 days, and I am not yet caught up getting back to everyone, but I certainly will. The one thing that I want to state is that these applications, particularly in our urban neighborhoods, often split neighborhoods at the BZA, and part of the reason is that they are in the backyard, and that changes the character of the neighborhood. So that has been a continual problem that you will see with some of these events if they are not contained inside the building. That is what I'm trying to prevent in the future, is that type of an argument. Many of the arguments that we heard today are great. I certainly want to work with people on their weddings and things like that. But we are talking about uses that are primarily, if not exclusively, commercial and residential zoning. And I think that there are perhaps better ways of addressing that with other zoning tools that are available for event spaces. And then one of the things I did want to address with regard, in particular with regard to East Ivy, has been mentioned. This ordinance is not geared toward any event, but it is worth stating to y'all that East Ivy's renewal permit at the BZA is subject to possibly being approved or disapproved based on the current language that is in. And again, that goes back to the ambiguity in the language as it exists today. Causes problems for these, for the venues and for their potential guests. So that happened in the absence of this ordinance. This ordinance was never referenced in that hearing at which they could potentially lose their license, and that is between themselves and the Board of Zoning Appeals, obviously, again, with the current language. So I would urge your approval of this today as a start of a conversation. I would like to bring it to the council, and then at the council work with our codes and zoning committee as well as our tourism and entertainment committee, and we can work through a lot of these issues at the council level before I will bring it up for a final vote. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Declare the public hearing closed. I think I'll start with you.
I knew you were going to do that to me. I was hoping to start over there. First, I, as a former resident of East Nashville, specifically Russell Street, and down the street from Ivy, I understand, but parking and the noise concerns, it sounds to me, and I've got some questions here. First of all, when we talk about protection of surrounding neighbors, I'm trying to figure out what we're protecting them from, and it sounds to me it's a noise issue and a parking issue. Does that frame the issue?
That's not entirely the issue.
Okay. Are you talking about character of the neighborhood?
The residential character.
I will concede that there is some confusion and there needs clarification. I don't want to repeat last week. My last statement was just tweeted out that said, is this the right answer? I think this is overbroad. I do think that the language can be tweaked. This seems to be drafted specifically for an urban neighborhood, East Nashville specifically. Cedarwood, I live in Whites Creek. We do have rolling hills, and I know that if I got married in New Orleans, and I couldn't go into the historic home. We had to get married outside if we went. So my concern is that the language would be overbroad. I'm also concerned with grandfathering language, prohibiting future uses. It just seems overbroad at this point. I'd like to let others speak, and then let's talk about where to go from here, if that makes sense.
Jessica.
I think I am right, but I just wanted to clarify that the owner has to live in the property in order, right? There has to be someone actually living in the property.
That or someone that has an interest if it's under a corporation or some other entity other than just a homeowner.
So if it is under a corporation, then?
Someone that has a share.
Okay.
Must live.
Okay. I have a lot of thoughts about this too. I'm also a former resident of Russell Street, so I'm certainly aware of the traffic on Russell Street in that part of Edgefield. Jennifer and I were both talking about when East Ivy was Larry and Larry's home, and the fact that it was always known as quite an event space, even if it was just for neighborhood parties. And I think, when I was kind of reading some of the letters that have been submitted about the original intent of this ordinance and noting that the idea was to preserve historic structures at a time when land values were so low that this was the only way that people could come in and actually afford to purchase these homes and renovate these homes and keep them. And the argument was being made that, property values are sky high, and therefore people don't need that additional incentive at this point. They don't need the additional income source. And I would argue that I don't think that that's true, and I actually think that preserving not just the homes but the surrounding properties is equally important. I mean, I know there's several homes in question, one on Russell Street, which is a historic home with 2 adjacent lots. If the home sells and the 2 adjacent lots sell separately, how's the neighborhood going to feel if 4 homes go into that vacant lot next to this beautiful historic home that's been there forever? I mean, I think we would rather keep that historic property together with the historic home and the surrounding lots. I certainly think that if this does go forward, consideration to existing homeowner or to existing business owners and residents is critical, and that we should keep that in mind. But I also think I'm leaning towards, the fact that there does need to be some clarification. I think that you could make the case that, that it's a historical property surrounded by one fence or something like that to make it clear that it's intended to be one piece, one piece of property, one structure. But I think, taking the grounds away from the home and trying to keep everything within that one residential structure would really do a disservice, especially if it's countywide and applied to the rural areas. I just think it's, there's some very different issues that need to be considered. And I also think beyond creating the additional barrier of telling a new property owner they're going to have to go and get this property rezoned if they want to be able to use it for special events, there might be other ways to proceed with it as it is done right now, but adding in additional permits. I mean, it does seem like there are some other things that could be applied to make this more compatible with the neighborhood without this kind of a broad blanket ordinance.
Greg?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Councilman, for bringing the bill. I guess I have a couple of questions. I guess I'm always trying to find the facts, of how many complaints have we received, or has the police received on like the neighboring properties on these types of homes? Because it sounds like noise is the issue, and
That's not, we're looking at something that's countywide. We're not looking at any specific property. Mm-hmm. So that's not information that I have. And
okay, then maybe this is a better question. How many of these homes are there in the county? Maybe that's a better place to start.
I'm not certain, but someone told me 5, but I'm sure there are probably more. It's my understanding that there's not really a record.
Okay, well, I just, before I like to try to find out what the situation is. I like to know, what properties it applies to and the neighbors and the complaints and all that. And, generally, we're trying to solve problems that happen out there, but I wanted to get a clarification on that, so thank you very much. The thing, too, is that it seems to me that, I guess for the 5 properties that, if that's true, it's saved those particular properties in some instances. And I think so our argument is now that it's been successful, now that the wedding venues have been saved and the historical homes have been saved, now let's do a 360 and get rid of the particular, this type of law, and I think there are some potential homes out there that could potentially be under this provision. Now, let me ask this other clarifying question for me. It doesn't apply to bed and breakfast. I know that there's a separate, this is not the same type of deal, right? Because I know there's a big...
Correct, that's a separate use in the zoning code.
Okay, I was just seeing if that's true or not. I'm trying to get my head around this. I do know a little bit about it. I think that as far as the current properties that are vested, they kind of have some type of, I wouldn't say vested right, but vested reliance and investment that was stated, and I think that some folks have spent quite a bit of money, and there probably are some complaints, but it seems to me that it would be better to regulate the amplification of the music maybe, or the parking issue, and not change the entire ordinance. I think it's written the entire definition. I think it's written too broad, Councilman. That's how I feel. And I want to make sure that it doesn't also apply to Travelers Rest in Creve Hall. I live in Creve Hall. I used to represent the area. I have a home that's right next to Travelers Rest. Never have had complaints about weddings, outdoor weddings there, and think it's a great place. And so I also would like to get that clarification just from knowing that there are several different places like Travelers Rest, which is a huge historical place in Creve Hall, where I'm from. But I just think that it's not, we haven't fleshed it out enough. And I feel like the way that it's currently written, it just goes way too far and hurts a lot of people. And so, I wouldn't feel right supporting it as it is. So.
Stewart.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't know if it's a relevant question for legal, but you can tell me if it's not. A lot has been discussed regarding grandfathering, and I don't know whether that's our role or whether we could make that a condition if we wanted to, but is it something we could do as a condition if we so choose?
Yes, I think that y'all could add a condition that says something along those lines. If a property has a permit, you can specify in the ordinance, or you can make a recommendation to specify in the ordinance a condition that it would be grandfathered going forward.
Okay, thank you. Well, I have, I guess, a different perspective. I passed the original bill that provided for bed and breakfast, neighborhood-oriented bed and breakfast, which have worked well. They're not the same as this at all. In fact, you can have a 1-foot sign according to that ordinance, and that's worked pretty well. People have not been overwhelmed by that. Neighborhoods have been welcoming of that. This has always been a problem. I have no complaint against our Board of Zoning Appeals. I'm sure they would, like we as volunteers, would value what the council ultimately decides as clarifying. So I don't want to get involved in any past discussions, but what the councilman has done is brought to us a very real problem that I completely agree with, which is that some of our historic neighborhoods have come under danger of being overwhelmed, not just by noise, but by the erosion of basic neighborhood uses. And that's kind of where I am. We're close to that point. So I'm interested to hear from the council lady from the 8th District, Council Lady Van Rees, that there may be places that would be useful, that this particular land use would be useful, and I bet there are. And luckily, we have a mechanism for that. It's called the Legislative Act of Rezoning. That's what zoning is a legislative act that we make recommendations for. What's happened in this situation, and could continue to happen without some kind of addressing of it, as the councilman has suggested, is avoiding that public process of elected officials making that decision as a legislative act. And I don't think it was ever contemplated when this was originally begun that it would be so massive. I do agree that the word structure to me means a particular thing, but I don't want to sound angry about it. I just think the councilman's done us a good favor by making us deal with it. And I think there are other places. I don't know if Travelers Rest is included in this or not. Is it, by the way? Does anybody know? We haven't heard anything from those folks.
I don't know if that's a historic home event or not.
But I sort of am not prepared to support the ordinance without a condition that it only go forward. That much is true. I don't think that's fair. I think I've been convinced by that. But I am very much thinking that with that condition, and without saying we should never have another one in this county, because we don't have to say that. We have a mechanism for doing that. A case-by-case rezoning with full input from neighbors, council members, and the Metro Council. That's kind of where I am.
Lillian.
Well, to echo all of the comments previously made, there certainly is a reason for the bill. I mean, I know you're probably hearing things in your end. I'm sure people who live in the neighborhood have intimate experience with these events and know that it is disruptive. And while it's important to have event spaces and venues and places where we can welcome visitors and party goers, it's also really important to take care of the people who live in the neighborhoods and take care of their idea of what their neighborhood was going to look like when they moved in. And so, I mean, there obviously is a reason for the bill, and I do thank the councilman for bringing this forward. There seems to be some discrepancy, however, as to the disruption of these event spaces. It doesn't seem like every event space is disruptive or has the same level of disruptiveness. It also sounds like not all of the historic home property owners knew about this bill or really had a chance to maybe work with you in developing language that might be more narrowly tailored and maybe more productive as far as accomplishing your goals. And it sounds like you acknowledge that there may be some revisions and maybe there's some possibility for change in the language going forward. And I think the language should be changed. I think there is some tailoring that could be done to the bill to make it better at accomplishing its goals. I would not be prepared to vote for the bill as it is written now, but I do think there is an opportunity for writing a bill that would protect the neighbors.
Hunter.
First of all, I love when so many of my neighbors come here and often end up on two sides of the issue, and it's great to be able to have this kind of discussion and debate among many people who love Nashville and love East Nashville. I do think there's a problem with the current ordinance. I mean, I think I'm sort of summarizing maybe what everyone has said. It was drafted. We probably need some changes to it. I had a couple of questions relative to the current ordinance. Is there any limitation on size of event currently? Or is that established by the BZA? Or can it be established by the BZA?
The special exception requires that the home meets all the bulk standards of the zoning code, so there's nothing that specifies specifically the event, just the bulk standards for the home itself.
Okay.
But I don't know that answers the commissioner's question. Is that something that the BZA can put on the permit?
Yes, the BZA has the authority to put any restrictions that they see fit on any of these events.
Okay. Is that also something that could be written into the ordinance potentially as well? Size of events relative to size of home, property? I don't know. I don't want to solve that issue here, but
You certainly could, Commissioner. I think a little bit to Commissioner Atkins' point, though, and it really is dependent on the venue itself. If you've got a historic home that is acres away from anything else in Whites Creek versus one in the middle of East Nashville, I would think that the appropriateness of the size would be different, but it would be up to the BZA to look at those facts and then hopefully put those into whatever that permit is.
Currently,
that's it. You could, though, absolutely put a limit on it, yes.
I guess a question for the councilman. You mentioned parking as an issue, which doesn't surprise me, of course, but does this bill at all address parking?
No, Commissioner, it does not.
No, Commissioner, this bill primarily seeks to clarify what the council's intent of the original ordinance or of the code as it currently states, which is that it shall, not may, shall be within the historic structure. That literally is what I'm seeking clarification of, as what did the council give the Board of Zoning Appeals jurisdiction to approve. It is my interpretation that the council gave the Board of Zoning Appeals at some point in time, maybe not originally, but at some point in time, the council gave the Board of Zoning Appeals authority to approve an event's use within the historic structure, and that is what I'm seeking to clarify at this point. I think that there, could be any number of things for parking or things like that specifically. However, that this bill again specifically seeks clarity and consistency about what the council authorizes the Board of Zoning Appeals to authorize.
Okay, thank you. Well, I think we would all agree that some changes need to occur to this ordinance. I worry simply about this approach a bit, and that when, a 2-year-old child needs to go outside and run, and the father goes out with that child and runs in the yard behind these homes, is that taking the event outside? Or if someone goes out to smoke a cigarette, is that taking the event outside? Or when you throw rice going out to the car from the front of the home, is the event outside? So I just wonder if this approach, if it's the right approach or not, and if there are other ways, such as that are really going to address the problem, which is, I think, noise, maybe lighting, I don't know, but limiting the music, amplified music, to only indoors might be a possibility that I think would probably address the majority of the problems that we're having. So I think there, I'm not prepared to vote for this the way it is tonight. If we were to vote for it or vote on a motion to approve this tonight, I would hope that we would consider a condition that it only applies to those moving forward and not to those that have already been granted the right to use their properties outside. But I don't think that solves the problem either, so I'm not prepared to really support this tonight. I think it needs a little more work.
Thank you. I certainly appreciate the concerns of the neighbors about noise and parking. That's an ongoing issue in neighborhoods, of how these creative uses that we, for one reason or another, and we have done it in good faith, I think with good intent to preserve historic structures, which I think we all agree has benefited Nashville significantly. But we try to do it in a way that does not damage the character of the neighborhood or the quality of life in the neighborhood. And I think that is something we should always try to be protective of. I would agree that it's a very broad approach, and that perhaps, certainly hearing from one venue that has 300 parking spaces on site and another one that's got 50 acres, it doesn't seem appropriate to require them to have amplified music inside. But we do need to be sure that there is a way that the current noise ordinance is obeyed. And I would love for the planning experts over there, if you can just review what the current noise ordinance says with regard to amplified music and what those restrictions are.
There's nothing in the code that speaks to a specific noise. There's just a section in the code that speaks to the decimal levels at a property line. So these.
I believe there's a reference to amplified music specifically that says it can't be audible at the property line. It may be in.
Yes, that's correct.
That's what I thought. I spent a lot of time with this.
They have to meet the same requirements as anyone else.
Right.
For the zoning code requirements.
Right. And the issue is the difficulty of enforcing that. And I don't know, I have not participated in the BZA renewal process, or if there's a possibility of putting language in that would deal with repeated offenses. If there's always a problem with loud music and dancing all night long, I think that is a real problem in a neighborhood. And if that's how weddings have to work, then that's probably more appropriate on 50 acres outside of town than it is in the middle of East Nashville. But if it's a classical guitarist playing, and that's what happens, then that is not a violation of our noise ordinance, and, do we need to kill both of those in one fell swoop? And then parking is the other issue I think is a real legitimate concern in an urban setting. So my concern is that we do need to deal with those issues. It sounds like as it's applied here, it's an awfully broad solution that is not necessarily appropriate to at least some of these homes. And when we speak of grandfathering, that applies to future ones. I'm not sure that solves the concerns of neighbors today with regard to existing ones. It sounds like there haven't been a lot of complaints, and maybe it's just a concern that this will proliferate. I'm not sure, but I feel like, and Councilman Withers has expressed concern, the willingness to have more conversation about this. I'm not sure how we can proceed if we know we're not comfortable with how it is now. So I'm sure not going to make the motion. I'm hoping somebody with more experience on the Planning Commission will do that. But, I think we all support the idea of making this work better, and that this doesn't quite do it, so that I support the idea of continuing to work on this in a way that will accomplish the goal.
Other comments?
Could I speak just for a minute to the grandfathering statutes, our grandfathering opportunity that's been brought up? Yes, just speaking to the grandfathers here. So a lot of the special exceptions that are given, some of the special exceptions that are granted for historic home events have time limitations set on them, and some do not. But if the commission is inclined to address that as part of the recommendation for approval, or if you disapprove and then do recommend amendments, I would suggest that you focus on their ability to apply for a special exception and not just say that they're grandfathered in. I think to the council lady's point that if they have to come back and there are issues and there are repeated offenses that they violate the terms that the BZA does create, then you want that opportunity, even if they're existing today, that the BZA might be able to deny them in the future. So it really would be just grandfathering them to be able to apply for the special exception, not grandfathering them in as a use in perpetuity.
Right.
Well, with that explanation, I think that there are a lot of other things to consider. That's a very good point, Doug. That leads me to one last question, I guess, that I have is how long do the permits last? Are they indefinite, or they come back every... What's the permit?
They vary. Some of them are for a number of months, and some of them are permanent special exceptions. So it could be 26 months, for example, or it could be a permanent.
That is so weird. Well, so that even begs the question a little more. I think that we have a lot more to do, and so I would personally, I don't want to. I just can't support it today, and I don't want to. I think that there's a lot of commissioners that don't support it, Councilman, and maybe a 2-meeting deferral while we work on it some more, or I just think that we would like to be involved in the conversation and try to figure it out. Councilman? Yes, please. Yeah.
Absolutely. I really want to say that I am a historic preservationist. I have worked really hard to protect historic buildings. I've worked very hard as a neighborhood leader to find compromises. I'm all about compromise and engagement. Sometimes it takes bringing a bill forward such as this to recognize that there is a problem and to bring people together to talk about it. I would love an opportunity to incorporate some of the thoughts that you commissioners have had. I would love an opportunity to work with some of the property owners. I think just as we found sometimes with short-term rental, I think some of those property owners themselves have really good ideas about how to, how to resolve some of those issues, and we can talk about it. I would love an opportunity to continue talking about this. Again, my intent is not to take anything away from anyone who currently has a permit. That renewal is between themselves and the Board of Zoning Appeals, given the current language, okay? But I would love an opportunity. I think that given the interest in this, that would be of great service to our neighborhoods as well as to those property owners that are looking at that investment, to figure out what it is, and whatever means you have of whatever time you're willing to give me to do that, I would be more than willing to perhaps work with, again, I'd really like to work with some of my colleagues on the council and see if we can have public community meetings and start to work on ways to solve these problems in a meaningful way.
Well, I don't think we should defer just because we're not all on one accord on anything, but this one I think we should because it's a new concept to a lot of us, and we haven't kept up with what's actually happening with these. I am firmly convinced, the more I think about it, that the ultimate solution is to realize that a non-elected body making decisions on future applications for non-residential uses in residential neighborhoods is inappropriate. That's where I'm going. But I'm not sure that we're prepared to craft anything that would get a majority vote today. So I think it is reasonable to leave it here and have all the parties work with the staff and see what can come back. But it is a council bill?
It is a council bill that has a caption, and unfortunately, the caption reads as an ordinance amending section 1704-060 and 1708-030 of the Metropolitan Code by modifying the definition of historic home event to limit events to enclosed areas. And the specificity of that caption creates a bit of a dilemma in what everyone's proposing right now, and that is to work on this piece of legislation to address some of these other issues. The caption you cannot amend. It is the caption of the bill. And so it would have to be a new bill if we were to start to look at changing the ordinance beyond just limiting events to enclosed areas.
Well, not necessarily. I mean, we could pass a bill that was clearly for future applications that would not be out of compliance with this pending bill. If our view ultimately is that it's not just a matter of specific noise issues, but the whole character of the neighborhood, and is this an appropriate means which essentially allows you to bypass the legislative zoning process. But your point is, I'm not sure I agree with your point, if in fact we would make it prospective ultimately in our discussions. Is that right?
I mean, if the language that you would change or add to the bill or recommend be added to the bill, if that is different substantively to what the caption says, there is case law that says you can't change the caption of the bill. So, you also can't have the caption conflict with what the body says. The timing of it potentially, that might be, if you just want to say it applies going forward, if that's the only thing that's not in the caption, correct. But if it's anything, I think, outside of the timing of it, then yes, you can't change it. You would be precluded from anything else.
As far as not to belabor the point, I have concern beyond just the timing of it. I think there's a lot of questions regarding the overall. I understand the political process, but it's clear that the language is unclear. That the event shall be within a historically significant structure as determined by the Historic Zoning Commission is clear language. It's just not been clearly applied in the past, and therefore we have uses now that have confused, and we need clarification on that. And this is not necessarily the way to do that. I don't think it has to do with grandfathering versus prospective versus current. I think if there's better ways to do this than this broad language.
Well, I was going to defer it, but it sounds like this bill would not carry things that we want to talk about. So maybe the councilman can always bring back another bill. I mean, it's not, he doesn't have to pay a fee or anything like that. So it's a normal process. So, I mean, I would have deferred it, but I don't think that solves our concerns or issues. And I kind of agree with Stuart a little bit, for once. That, the political, the council should come up with another idea for us to potentially look at, take under our, in our concerns. And so I'm gonna move to disapprove.
Second.
Second.
All in favor of disapproval? Keep your hands up, just good. Okay, the motion carries to disapprove. So.
That's why this needs to be clarified.
The ones, if you're leaving the auditorium, please move out quickly so we can move on to the next item, and quietly, please.
This is item 9 on the agenda, Oakwood Avenue SP.
Okay, Commissioner.
This is a request to rezone to permit a mixed-use development at properties located at 2034, 2030.
Excuse me, Chairman. Sorry, I couldn't hear.
Oh, sorry.
So if we could ask.
Yeah.
Just go ahead and start over.
So item 9, thank you.
Item 9 on the agenda, Oakwood Avenue SP. This is a request to rezone to permit a mixed-use development on properties located at 2034, 2037, Pitway Drive, and Oakwood Avenue unnumbered. The site is approximately 20.61 acres. Staff recommendation is to approve with conditions and disapprove without all conditions. Current zoning on the property is IR, industrial restrictive. The policy is T4 Conservation and District Employment Center. This policy is intended to preserve, create, and enhance concentrations of employment that are often in a campus-like setting. A mixture of office, commercial, and even light industrial uses are present, but not necessarily vertically mixed. Complementary uses are also present and are encouraged as secondary and supportive of the primary functions of District Employment Center areas as places of intense economic activity featuring a large number of jobs. This is a regulatory SP, and there are standards associated with it. In order to create the necessary conditions to develop concentrations of employment, there are land use standards included, requiring that 60% of the total floor area be used for non-residential uses. Furthermore, the policy does provide guidance with respect to appropriate transitioning to less intense residential uses. And this SP does address them, including limiting the height along Oakwood Avenue to 2 stories and 35 feet, as well as along the northern property line, and prohibiting non-residential uses fronting Oakwood Avenue. This application would also enhance the pedestrian network, including requiring sidewalks along Oakwood Avenue, where presently there are none. Also along Oakwood Avenue, vehicular access would be limited to 2 entrances. There would also be direct pedestrian entrances as well as glazing requirements. This application achieves 2 critical planning goals, including creating walkable neighborhoods and supporting infill development. As this request is consistent with policy, staff recommendation is to approve with conditions and disapprove without all conditions.
Thank you. This item's open for public hearing. The applicant will be allowed 10 minutes, and you can hold 2 back for rebuttal.
You want to hear the council members first, or?
Yes, Councilman, you'd like to speak first?
I'd like to thank all of you for volunteering your time. I'd like to thank the planning staff for being here and not getting paid overtime, and your work is appreciative. I also want to thank Bob Lehman and Doug Sloan for driving out to the site and taking a look at it also. And thank you, gentlemen, because you didn't have to do that. I am in support of this zoning, and more importantly, On the Oakwood side, I agree with the planning's recommendation, staff recommendation, not compiling large-scale buildings along that corridor, keeping it to two-story regular single-family. The density is going to be heavily on the Pitway side where all the industrial is. This site may be a little bit familiar to this board because this was the site that a proposed cement plant, in case they didn't get a zoning approval, which they didn't, could have gone. This is one of the sites they were looking at from the Cowan Street River because the zoning is already in place with a high IWG. Frankly, I do respect the property owner's rights, but we feel as a neighborhood that, a higher, residential use on top of the hill and some single-family homes along the Oakwood area would be more inclined than a cement plant or any kind of high-end industrial right now. And I'm in full support. We did have a community meeting. We're looking at having another one because I know it was on a Saturday and some neighbors weren't able to make it. It was at the East Precinct. It was videotaped. And more importantly, right now, this is where the density should be. It's off of Trinity Lane. It has access on the Ellington Parkway. And this is a huge industrial area. And I'm asking for your support. I just thank you for coming here, and I'm willing to talk to neighbors for or against. And I think the biggest thing here is that, and if I'm wrong, any of the planning staff, please correct me. I'm making the less intensive use on the Oakwood side where you're not going to have big trucks, because usually big trucks, you're thinking about industrial, which can go there right now with this current zoning. Making it residential will prevent that sort of activity, and we're pushing the higher density up towards the top of the hill and from the Pitway entrance, which is right there off of Trinity Lane, right next to Ellington Parkway and the highway. And thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Hello again. Nancy Van Rees up in District 8. I wanted to speak to this because as you see on this map, those houses at the top are in District 8. It literally borders along. And I'm here to speak in approval of this idea. We need more neighbors. If you look a little further up on Oakland, Oakland Park is also under some consideration for some redevelopment. And so I am very anxious to be able to be working with Scott Davis in District 5 as we bring these two neighborhoods together. So it has my support.
Thank you. You'll be allowed 10 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Roy Dale, Dale & Associates. We're representing the applicant on this project. I wanted to say thank you to you guys. It's pretty impressive listening to you talk many times, especially on that last consideration. You have a lot of knowledge here. You're also fair, and you have a lot of common sense, and that's really valuable, and I appreciate that. I don't ever get to speak unless I have something that staff is recommending against, or maybe a neighbor is here to speak on. And so a lot of times I come up with, I don't try to represent clients I don't believe in. Sometimes I have something up here that staff doesn't recommend approval of, and you may agree with them, and by the time it's all said and done, after I've heard you talk, I'm agreeing with you. So you do a great job, and I just wanted to thank you for that. The staff has done a really good job on this. I think this is a down zoning. This is all industrial property now. This is going to be, this is the right way to go. I don't think people are in opposition to this. From my understanding, some notices went out. People got them late. Probably didn't get them until yesterday or maybe even today. They don't feel like they probably had an opportunity to understand what an SP is. We did have a community meeting. Scott will definitely have another meeting. I think there were some concerns about what could be built across from their houses. What could be built today would be intense industrial. So I don't think you can hear any people in opposition to this. I just think you can hear people that probably don't understand what's being proposed. And I promise you, before this goes to public hearing, we'll have another meeting. But we would like for you to, to vote on this today per the staff recommendation. And again, thank you very much.
Got 2 minutes for rebuttal if you'd like. Anyone in the audience wishing to speak in support, please come to the microphone. If there's others, please line up behind this lady if you would. Go ahead. Give us your name and address.
Hello, my name is Tara Lurs, and my address is 2401 Cairo Bend Road in Lebanon, Tennessee. And I actually represent the owners of this property. I'm also a realtor in Nashville, greater Nashville area, and have been for 12 years. So the beautiful thing about this project is, as we listed it, of course, initially we had a lot of industrial people looking into it, as he mentioned, for a concrete batch plant or a lot of Section 8 apartments or things like that. And it's such prime real estate in Nashville, as you know. We are in a huge demand right now. There's no place to put all these people that want to come to our great city. So I've actually dealt with a lot of developers over the years, and this particular developer is very excited about having affordable living here because she has a daughter that is a teacher in a Nashville school, and she wants her daughter to be able to afford to live in one of these great places. She's priced out of the Gulch. She's priced out of East Nashville and a lot of these other places. So she's actually talking about having some artist lofts there where they can have some work-live environments where people who are firemen and teachers and people who work in our city have an affordable place to live. And it's amazing that this developer cares so much and wants to do that. Having more industrial around there, you know, on the other side of the street, it's really affected everything that's around there as far as building and development. But on this side, I've seen a lot of the proposed plans that they've done, and it's absolutely amazing. So these people all around there would be able to walk over to coffee shops or some mixed-use places where there are available for work, live, and things like that, and it will be an amazing addition, especially right there off of that thoroughfare on Ellington Parkway. So it's really not jamming up a lot more on the interstates, but you've got a lot of access there. So everything's really been thought out and planned well, in addition to having the sidewalks and things right now that are not available in the area that the developer is willing to do and add in to actually enhance this city, and they care very much about doing that. Thank you so much for your consideration. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Any others wishing to speak in support? Seeing none, anyone wishing to speak in opposition?
Good evening, Chairman and committee members. I'm Terry Robertson. I reside at 2573 Sladen Drive, which is adjacent or butts into this property that is being proposed here. While we understand that, we being myself and a few of the residents, that it is industrial restrictive and that the proposal is for a specific planned mixed use, our concern is that we just recently received this information and have not had an opportunity to really understand what the proposals are. The previous person, Ms. Rhodes, that came and spoke, she spoke of coffee units and things of that nature, but that information has not been passed on to the residents. And so our concern is that while this would be perhaps better for us in terms of allowing a mixed use, and there would be perhaps not a manufacturing industry in our backyard per se, there are concerns about air quality. There are concerns about with the construction being done, because this lies in, our homes lie in a floodplain, that there may be some problems with flooding in the area because this proposed area sits on a hill. And therefore, we understand that there's going to be some landscaping. The bottom line here for us is that there's just not enough information for the residents to make a sound approval of this particular proposal. And so a lot of residents don't understand. They feel that perhaps there's some misunderstanding which may lead to distrust. And so we really want to understand exactly what's being proposed, how it's being proposed, and that it has taken into consideration water and sewer problems, flooding problems, and any other concerns that we have at this moment. I thank you for your time and your appreciation and your attention.
Any others wishing to speak in opposition? If there's others, please line up at the microphone, please.
Yes, my name is Brenda Mitchell-Hunt. I live at 2112 Oakwood Avenue, right across the street from where they want to put this at. It's a vacant lot to 22 acres. No one has contacted me. You have not had a council meeting with me. You only come to the house one time. That was before the election.
If you would, speak to the commission.
Okay, so my concern is, I'm not informed enough about what's going on. That's my resident. I've lived there 22 years. I don't want to look at something in front of me. I don't want to look at a building in front of me. Again, like the lady said about the coffee shops, nobody's heard anything about this. I need more explanation on what's going on.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition? Seeing none, you've got 2 minutes for rebuttal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Councilman Davis did have a community meeting. I think it was with a neighborhood, or maybe this is a neighborhood association. I know that probably everybody didn't get informed. That's not uncommon. I do know, having worked in his district a lot, he puts forth a great effort to meet with his constituents, and I know that he'll do that prior to this going to the council. This is an SP, which is good. We enjoy having community meetings because the more we learn about a piece of property, the more specific we can be. I had a community meeting this week on a piece of property out in the Bellevue area that I came out of that meeting with so much information, it really helped me to prepare a better plan or to add more specifics to an item that was pending through the council. And I think that's exactly what's going to happen here. So I would hope that you would endorse the staff's recommendation of approval. Trust us that we will be meeting with the community as we go through a legislative process, as we always do. And if there are conditions that need to be added to the SP, we'll certainly do that. And if there's anything that you've seen that you think we've neglected, we'll add that to the SP as well. So again, I would hope that you would recommend approval of this. Both council members support this. And that being said, I'll sit back down. Thanks.
Declare the public hearing closed. Councilman, I think you mentioned you would have other public hearing on this, other neighborhood meetings.
We will. On the edge of this one,
Come to the microphone then.
I apologize to any neighbors in my district or Ms. Van Reese's district that weren't informed about this. Right now, because we're borders, the very end of the property borders on Slayton and Oakwood, which Slayton belongs to Nancy Van Reese. And one thing though is we're going to pick somewhere else besides the East Precinct to have it. Maybe at the church right there off of Oakwood might be a more central location. Because I know there are some people that may have wanted to walk but didn't want to go up to the East Precinct. And more importantly, right now, I know some of the concerns with the overgrown, because it's a wooded area back there off of Oakwood, right next to this church where we could have the meeting at. And what we're going to do before we take it to public hearing is have another community meeting, and I'll coordinate with Council Lady Van Reese with that also, so that her residents nearby can be informed also. And I'm just asking for a staff recommendation of approval, and we can have another meeting, because once again, it still has to go through that legislative process in which, after it leaves this body, I will have more control over the process. And I just thank you for your time.
Thank you. Council Lady Allen.
Thank you. I just need to ask planning people, is this on public hearing next Tuesday? Sounds like it's not. Okay.
No bill has been filed.
So we got all kinds of time before it goes to council, just a process. So it sounds to me like there are opportunities for more information to go before it actually gets filed at the council. And I will say I'll have another shot to vote on this. So when Councilmember Davis brings it to the council planning committee, I can look him in the eye and say, did you have the community meeting? So it sounds to me like it's a good project. I would also just like to ask, Public Water Services, I guess is who I need to ask. Can you explain about stormwater and what processes y'all go through when new things are built, and how you address potential flooding for existing properties?
Yeah, sure thing. Hello, Commissioner, Chairman, and Planning Commissioners. Steve Minshew with Metro Stormwater. We will have a fair shake at reviewing this at a later time. As I understand it today, this is just a regulatory SP, so there's not any detailed specifics on stormwater. But the regulation stays the same, whether this is a regulatory SP or final construction drawings. We'll review it the same way whenever construction drawings do get submitted. They will be required to address cut and fill in the floodplain if there's any floodplain. They'll be required to do detention. They'll be required to do water quality. It will be either up to the regulations that stand today, or, as some of you may know, we have our regulations are going to change at the end of business day tomorrow. So you'll have to either do LID, or your site will have to have some sort of above and beyond circumstance to where you can't do LID, then you'd revert back to today's regulations. So it's getting a little bit tougher. We've been doing this at least for the last 2 years on a volunteer basis, and we've been having probably about 25% of our plans, maybe somewhere between a quarter or a third already be submitted under LID.
And LID means low impact development?
Yes, ma'am.
Which means it can't affect the other properties, correctly? It cannot?
Well, what it really does, it will aid more in infiltration versus just detaining and releasing it at a slower pace.
Okay, so you'll see to it that whatever is built there deals with its own water as much as possible on site so that it's not a flooding issue to the...
Absolutely.
Okay, I think that's important to state. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am, thank you.
Okay, no further questions.
Okay, Hunter?
I just have a couple of comments. This meets the policy. It looks like the conditions have been put in place that help protect the neighborhood, so I'm going to support the recommendation of staff.
Okay, Lillian?
In addition to being commissioners, of course, we're all neighbors and we all have things going on in a neighborhood that we'd like to stay informed about. And I know the planning has notice requirements. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Notices usually get sent out 2 weeks before Planning Commission.
And can you talk about...
I'm sorry?
To property owners within 600 feet of the property. There would also be additional notices for the council as well as signs placed on the property for both meetings.
Thanks. One of the problems about neighbors not having notice, in addition to people feeling like they're not involved in what's going on where they live, is that I think that applicant acknowledges this, is that the plan isn't necessarily as good as it can be because people who are more familiar with the area haven't had an opportunity to be included in the process of developing the SP. And it also sounds like you acknowledge that there may be some changes made to the SP after talking to the neighbors. And so I don't know if I feel comfortable personally voting for approving something that I think hasn't been formulated with as much information as it should have been, and that where parties in favor of the SP acknowledge that maybe there's some more information needed to be gathered.
Stuart?
We don't have a legal requirement that there is any sort of a formal or informal hearing with the neighbors before it gets here under our code. However, I have thought for a while, as you have indicated, Commissioner, that particularly with SP zoning, where it's pretty fluid, and concepts and words that aren't readily understandable, that the earlier the input, the better. And that was particularly brought out when we heard that this will be a better plan later before it gets passed. I'm very enthused to see the staff endorse one of Councilman Davis's bills. I think that's great. But I'm a little worried about the fact that once it leaves here, it's harder to change. It's harder to incorporate, and I think Mr. Dale will actually do well with that. He's proven that he can incorporate things that come up in these meetings. But, it just seems to me that at the earlier stages where there's free parking, you don't have to go downtown, and it just seems this is the place, and before today is the place for the real input, instead of a formally noticed public hearing down at 2nd Avenue. Now that's, again, not a requirement, but it's just sort of probably best practices and to have the best possible hearing out in the neighborhood. How many people came to the hearing out there, Councilman?
Besides the realtor for the property owner and the property and the property prospective buyer for the property, there were over 20 people there. They were from Queen Avenue, which at the time, I lived on, also from Duke and other streets around the area, and it was a Saturday. And this is before they filed planning and they shared their idea, and that's where everybody was getting the idea. We don't want the big, huge building on the Oakwood side, but put it up higher on the side where you got, Ellington Parkway and Trinity Lane, right there where all the industrial is up there. And that was the input that we got. And, and that's why we kind of figured that, hey, let's get some more people involved because it's 20 acres. And the stormwater is a concern of mine and other concerns, but they have 20 acres to figure it out. A lot of times, people like Roy Dale and the water department, they're figuring this out on a quarter of an acre and on a half an acre along Charlotte Pike. They have 20 acres to put retention and for water to make them do all kinds of things to this site. And, maybe on the Slayton side and by incorporating, help with Councilor Van Reese and getting some of the neighbors that border along Oakwood and then Norton and Slayton on the other side of Flamingo that aren't necessarily in my council district, getting their input, will also help, but mainly right now, it can be amended at council. It's a SP. We can add, other requirements and other things to limit certain aspects. We can't increase the density, of course, or anything when it gets through this body. However, though, we can always put more restrictions on, after getting more community input.
Well, there is a lot more input that can come. I guess I was concerned that maybe two or three people were there, and that doesn't seem to be the case. So I think in light of Hunter's observations about the complying with the plan and the assertions, this flat-out statements that other input will be incorporated and paid attention to. I think we can approve it at this point, but I do think as a matter of best practices, we all ought to push the input process as far down as possible before it gets here. But I'm impressed with what I've heard today, and I'll plan to support this. Greg?
Thank you, Chairman. In looking at the conditions, it seems like from a planning perspective, it seems like the right fit. And I also want to say I appreciate the councilman for not filing the bill yet. So there's a lot of time for input, and I know he probably did that on purpose. So in order to get more public input, and so I want to say thank you to the councilman, even though he probably needs to get out in his district a little more. Just kidding, councilman. The one question that has come up that I've heard, before on notice, our notice requirement is what, 600 feet?
For this kind of rezoning, yes.
Yeah, so it's like, what, not even, it's not, you might hit 5 houses, 10 houses and more. And to me, that we've always not done enough notice, but, and I understand there's limitations though on that, because if you think about it, what is the right notice requirement? What is the distance? And so for us, I think it becomes a funding issue, and it becomes a staff issue of how many, letters and how much work that we have to do as a planning commission. So it's our job to figure out that balance, and maybe it's something that we need to look at. But I understand why we do 600 feet, but I've always thought that we could potentially do more. But I think that we need more money from the councilman standing over there in the corner. And so, anyway, that's just my thoughts on the notice requirements, and that's why the sign is important. And I think that we do a good job and all that, but potentially more people getting letters. And I know sometimes we've had the councilman even send out some notices, haven't we, before, Doug? Or have we? I don't remember. Sometimes the councilmen do it.
I'm sure we have.
Yeah, I think we have. But I think that this, from a planning perspective, I'm going to support it.
Jessica?
I had one question, I guess, looking at the conditions and not totally being able to see the whole area. 60% of the floor area needs to be non-residential. Is that consistent with the surrounding neighborhood fabric?
Well, yes. 60% would be in order to achieve the goal of creating concentrations of employment with the policy.
Okay.
In terms of the residential uses in the adjacent neighborhoods, there is language in there to on transitioning into those residential neighborhoods, and that's where the height requirements as well as the non-residential uses prohibited along Oakwood Avenue come into effect.
Okay, but we feel like 60% of the floor area ratio not along Oakwood, leaving that as non-residential, is compatible.
Correct.
Okay. I mean, I agree with Hunter. It seems like it meets with the policy, and certainly would prefer what's tentatively proposed to the cement batch processing plant. And I also take some reassurance from Commissioner Allen's statement that she will look Councilmember Davis in the eye and make sure he's had that second meeting. So I think with that, I will vote to support it as well.
Jennifer.
Nothing to add at this point.
Is there a motion? Stuart, you want to say something?
No, I was going to move we
Is there a
approve.
motion?
Second.
Motion second to approve. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? One abstaining. Motion carries. We're going to take a quick break and be back in about 10 minutes.
I think I'm okay.
Yeah. Well, what are they going to do to vote for non-residential? But, hey. I don't think it has to take very long. Legal would think that we want to I don't want this legal would think. So you're going to tell me when it's nothing more on, right? What? You're going to tell me when it's nothing more. I think I do have the timeline. Like, I'm scared to go and listen to any of the videos. No, I don't want it. Yeah, I figure.
Nashville. Specifically, the request is a rezone from single-family residential to two-family residential. Property is outlined in red. Staff is recommending disapproval. Property currently contains a single-family unit and is approximately 3.4 acres in size. Existing zoning is single-family, permit up to one residential unit. The proposed zoning, two-family, would permit a duplex of 2 residential units. This is in the East Nashville Community Plan. The policy is urban neighborhood maintenance. The policy is intended to preserve the existing character of areas. The policy could support single family, it supports two-family, it could support multifamily in certain locations. In this case, the property is located mid-block, surrounded by single-family residential. There are some duplexes in the area, but not within the immediate area. So while the policy would support the use due to the location of this property, it would not support the request. This shows the surrounding land uses. The property in question is outlined in blue. The yellow is the single-family residential units. In conclusion, staff is recommending disapproval as the proposed zoning is not consistent with the policy.
Thank you. This item is open for public hearing. The applicant be allowed 10 minutes. The applicant here.
The applicant is here. May I be allowed to speak first, ladies and gentlemen? All right, Mr. Swigert, sir. All right, I think you're much better than Vanna White, but could you go back to the other map, please, sir? All right, there you go. Okay. The current property you see is outlined there in red. Okay, if we're going down Ward Street, go down 1, 2, 3 parcels. And across the street, and 2 parcels down, I have a row of duplex. This is where the Rosedale ditch drainage is. Okay. Once again, you have a hodgepodge of mixture of duplexes and other homes. And like Mr. Swigert is correct, next door and in the smaller immediate area, you do not have any duplexes. But across the street, you do have a mixture of duplexes and triplexes. And they're those wonderful 70 brick-looking and duplexes that we all love so much. Originally, and if I'm wrong, Mr. Swigert, please jump in, because I'm not perfect. If this was neighborhood evolving, the lot is over 10,000 square feet. Is that correct, sir? Correct. okay, and would have been allowed for a subdivide, in which we could have applied for it, the applicant could have, but it was suggested that it may not get approved. So instead of, wasting the money for that and then having to do a SPR rezoning anyway on the other end, we decided just to go in front of the Planning Commission. More importantly, the applicants did come to my neighborhood association meeting, Highland Heights. They presented their plan. I believe the applicant has some designs. And more importantly, we know that this site does not have an alley, and therefore they're not putting the houses behind each other. They're right next to each other. And the applicant is an East Nashville resident. They don't want to do the tall skinnies that everybody yells at us about. And they don't want a $500, $400,000 home there either. And even though this won't be the classical sense of affordable, it'll be more affordable than what's being built currently in the area with the shotgun $300,000 McMansions that are going up on the other street. And we're in support because the big thing to me is you come to my association and you tell my residents what you want to do. And they're going to come back again because there'll be another chance for other residents who may have not been there to hear about their proposed plan before this goes to council also. And hopefully in this area, pretty soon I'll be asking for a policy change, involving Jones and other parts of this area, because this house has been abandoned for 4 years. It's had codes issues. It's been in environmental court a few times. And once again, this property is bigger than the average lot in my district. Most of my lots are those 50 by 150 lots. Mr. Swagger, what size lot is this, sir?
It's 0.34 acres, about 14,000 square feet.
About 14,000 square feet. So I'm in support, and I ask for your recommendation. If you don't recommend it, I understand, we're still friends. But if the applicant will be allowed to show you their designs and maybe some advice or some other help to get this done. But my neighbors were more inclined to like this because there wasn't a house behind the other. It wasn't going to be 3 stories. They'll have their own parking because the lot's wide enough, and the houses aren't tall and skinny. They're pretty wide. Thank you.
Thank you. Any others wishing to speak in support?
Okay, so I'm getting stage fright, so just bear with me. So this is my project. I do live in East Nashville. I am a native Nashvilleian myself. I've lived on Woodland Street for 8 years now. I've experienced the tall and skinnies. I've experienced the negative side of development. So I'm very passionate about the positive side of development. And so hopefully what you're viewing right now will help kind of visualize that for you. The area, the street, Scott Davis mentioned the diversity of the area. So you're looking at a street that is, I think, got like 5 houses on the street. They're 1950s, homes. This one happens to have asbestos siding on it. So, my passion is improvement and, the design piece of it. And, I only want to see good things for the area because, this is a neighboring area and there's lots of positive growth that's happened. And I feel like this could continue that momentum for positive growth because if you go a couple of streets in one direction, you have, condos, another couple of streets. You've got this exact same type of landscape happening, identical to this, and when something is done, in a tasteful way and it's sort of staying in keeping within the neighborhood, I feel like this is going to be a really positive, substantially positive thing for the people that are living there now. And so, like Scott had mentioned, we did, a couple of different mailings. The sign was posted, the visibility was there. Scott has talked to the residents and and they're very positive about it as well. So I just kind of want to close with the fact that, positive growth is something that is important to me, especially because I do live in the neighborhood, and especially because I have seen the negative side of development with the tall skinnies. I'm not a big developer, just someone that's concerned in the community and wants to see the positive side of development, which is, growth for all, and everyone, wins in the end, and we're able to bring in, more people for density's sake and for the neighborhood. Thank you.
Okay. You'll be allowed 2 minutes for rebuttal. Any others in the audience wishing to speak in support?
Again, I'm going to say the same thing as her. It's, kind of tough when you don't plan on how to approach you guys, and I appreciate you taking this in consideration. I happen to be the real estate broker that sold this lady the property. And when you go into that neighboring area, you do see total different elements there. The house has been abandoned. It has been shown several different times. We've tried to resell the property, so we're taking a different approach to try to better the neighborhood. I've been to the meetings that Mr. Davis has held on quite several different occasions. I've went around the development all through there, and there's quite need there for improvement for that district, with adding these type of homes. The type of home that this young lady is trying to put there with the two is more of a single-family residence rather than the tall and skinny, to keep the neighborhood in a positive way to be more affordable. Whereas most of your homes that are being built, the tall and skinnies, they're $400,000, $500,000 in a lot of different areas. So we are asking that you guys take a real close look at this and at least try to approve to help her, because she does live in the neighboring area, for the growth and to revitalize, some of these areas, especially with this home being in the compliance issues in the past, and it also was purchased through a tax sale and been abandoned. So all of the negative factors of us trying to resell the property, all I've ever heard from the people that has visited the property is the thing needs to be bulldozed down and something needs to be done to the property. And you see that quite often throughout this whole area. So that's where I stand with my comment for approval.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any others wishing to speak in support? Anyone wishing to speak in opposition? Seeing none, you've got 2 minutes for rebuttal if you'd like, but there's not anything to rebut, I don't think. So.
That's not his rebuttal, it's hers.
Give you 2 minutes.
Our East Nashville neighborhood associations are very passionate. When they don't like something, they're here. Even when the planning approves it or disapproves it, they're here if they don't dislike something. These fine folks have been in front of my Highland Heights Neighborhood Association, which is very active, and will email and come down here and tell you how they feel. Now, once again, looking out there in the audience with all the notices and having the people come to my meetings to explain to my citizens what they're trying to do, and my citizens knowing the history of this house and knowing the past issues with this home, and then it being abandoned because of the tax sale issues, which we all can't help because it was a state tax sale issue and other things going on with the property, which made it abandoned, which made it a danger and a headache for the council person because, kids will play in there. You got to find, if there's not an owner, you got to board it up. Then I got to bug Bill Penn, and then he has to send Maddie over there to bust some heads. And the main thing right now is I'm not asking you to agree with me. I just want you to understand where I'm coming from, and I'm going to respect the decision that this body makes. Thank you.
Thank you. Declare the public hearing closed. Greg.
So I guess my question is the 3 3 lots beside of it is, can we go to the slide where it shows all of the lots? I guess it's back if you keep going. That would probably work, I guess. So the councilman said there were some duplexes on the same street or across the street. Where are those located? I didn't quite understand.
This area, you can see the mouse, but it's at the corner. I can't see the name of the street, but it's the orange-colored lots. Those are duplex and triplex.
And then where's the lot that we're...
Mid-block on Ward, outlined in blue.
Okay. There it is, yep. And what was the main reason the staff opposed it? Was it didn't meet the policy plan? It didn't meet the policy?
It doesn't meet the policy due to location, being mid-block on a single-family residential street and within a larger residential area.
But it would, so say there was a question about subdividing it, would it meet the subdivision regulations if?
No, it would not.
Okay. I'm going to let the other commissioners ask questions and learn from them.
Stuart?
Thank you.
Where are the R6 lots on this map?
This area is all RS5, single family.
Not just that block, but the entire neighborhood?
Correct.
So this is a spot zone in the middle of a block. And we can't approve it, even if the council does. We cannot approve this, I think, and have any credibility for future decisions. But that's just my take on it.
Lillian?
I feel like this is deja vu. We just had this exact same dilemma presented to us, and we decided that we obviously have to follow policy, and having this here in mid-block, as planning stated, on a single-family area, obviously a single-family street, and most of the area is also single-family, will just be inappropriate and against policy, and therefore require our disapproval.
Hunter?
Well, I appreciate the applicant's desire to invest in the area and the councilman's relentless efforts to really help his entire district. And, frankly, I don't necessarily believe there's anything wrong with this request in that I think duplexes and single-family homes can exist together. However, I think I agree with my colleagues that, it's unfortunate that the rest of the neighborhood is all zoned only for single-family, and I don't really think we can approve this single lot within the middle of a block. I think location is the real issue here. Perhaps and we've had these conversations before, Councilman, perhaps there's an area here that we could look at an entire block or 2 or 3 or a street to zone for single family and duplexes, but I don't think we can recommend doing that one at a time.
I think I'm going to echo everyone else. Philosophically, it's very difficult for me to do redistrictings on a mid-block similar to this. I understand, again, where the council member's coming from. It's a lovely home, and I don't think anyone would object to having it on their street. And I think the thought of perhaps that entire block of large lots being rezoned as a group would be more acceptable for the Planning Commission. The good news is I'll get to hear this again. So, and I know the planning staff the Planning Commission has to look at it one way and the council looks at it another way, and Councilmember Scott Davis knows that. So I guess as I'm sitting here in this body, I will probably be a purist and support we're saying from that point of view, but I'm certainly going to continue the conversation when we come back and look at it from a constituent point of view, because I think this is, it seems like a good solution to a unique situation that in other circumstances might be easier to support. But I think it might, as a council member, I would feel more comfortable rezoning the entire block as opposed to a single lot. So here in this room, I will not support this rezoning, but that's not the end of it.
Jennifer?
I have nothing to add.
Jessica?
I don't really have anything to add either. I agree with everything that's been stated. Are there any other options short of rezoning the entire block? I can't think of any, but...
I forget the year, but the whole district was rezoned. It was a R6. This is the only R6 neighborhood in my whole district that's less than a mile from downtown that's zoned RS5. There was a previous council person that rezoned the whole district to RS5. And my spots that are R6 were parts that, because of the census and redrawing the district lines, I inherited from Councilman James. That's one parts of my district that was on R6, which was originally part of, Mr. Withers' neighborhood. And so when the council person did the RS5 rezoning for the whole district, they left a lot of duplexes, they left a lot of industrial buildings, commercial buildings zoned RS5. So that's the little institutional history for some people on the planning staff or the commission may not remember that.
I was just going to point out one thing. I'm not sure that staff would support a whole block of duplex zoning either in an area with no alleys, and we might look at strategic locations like we do with sort of the opposite of the mass down zonings on large corner lots or areas like that. But there are no alleys in this whole area. But we might look at strategic locations if there's an SP plan that limits the size and limits the access and makes it more comparable to the area. But I just wanted to point out that doing the whole block might not be supported by staff either.
Okay. Well, no, I don't have any other questions. I think this is I'm sorry because I think that it is a nice addition to the neighborhood and would like to definitely see the improvement on the street, but for the reasons stated above, I can't support it.
Stuart?
Well, I remember when this was all rezoned, and I just, in case I don't think I made it clear, I'm not absolutely sure it shouldn't be our zoning for the whole area, not just the block, but we can't do that today. So
if you'll recall, you and I both, I think, were sitting on that when the council lady did that. I don't know whether, I think Hunter might have been, but beyond that, I think it was just you and I. And I think we did a disservice to that area. How
did you vote? I don't. Really, we didn't vote for that.
We'll have to go back and look at the record, but I think it's time, Councilman, to go back and look at that entire district because it shouldn't be an entire district. There were some areas that were incorporated or included in that really should not have been. And I'm in sympathy with you and in support of you, but that's what happened, and I don't remember how Stuart and I voted, but it shouldn't have been passed. Should have been more time put into it. But I'll take a motion at this time.
I move we approve staff recommendation to deny.
Second.
Got a motion second to take staff recommendations to deny. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 14, final one.
Good evening, I'm Letitia Birkland. I'm presenting item number 14. This is the Inglewood Place Jackson Park Neighborhood Conservation Overlay District. The request is to apply the provisions of the Conservation Overlay District. The properties are highlighted in purple. These are located in East Nashville. This is the original application for the Overlay District. Current zoning is RS 7.5, RS 10, RS 20, and SP. The policy is conservation, T3 and T4 urban neighborhood maintenance. The policies are intended to preserve the general character of the existing residential neighborhoods. Neighborhood maintenance policies will experience some change over time, and when this occurs, efforts should be made to retain the existing character of the area. The overlay does support one critical planning goal by preserving historic resources. The process has involved various public meetings, including a recommendation of approval from the Metro Historic Zoning Commission for the overlay and the design guidelines. Before you is the original request from the applicant. Over time after the application was submitted, the applicant has given us his intention to amend the request to only include Inglewood Place neighborhood. This would remove the Jackson Park neighborhood from the overlay request. So to show you where that's located, this is the proposed amendment if approved by council. This is to remove the Jackson Park neighborhood, which is highlighted with the circle and also in purple. What would be left for the overlay would be the Inglewood Place neighborhood, which is identified in green. So this is the proposed area for the overlay after the amended area from the applicant if the council bill is amended. These properties are generally, basically consist of single-family residential and some two-family residential uses as well. The proposed conservation overlay is consistent with the policy, and therefore staff recommends approval with amendments to the proposed overlay properties and to revise the name to the Inglewood Place Neighborhood Conservation Zoning Overlay District.
Thank you. Councilman, I'll let you speak, and then I want to see how many is for and how many is against before we get to the public hearing.
Thank you, Chairman. Appreciate that. Button. Well, no, thank you. Appreciate it, Chairman. Members of the commission, thank you for being here. Thanks for staying late with us. And I wanted to thank all my neighbors as well, and really appreciate for or against everyone coming out. I know everyone loves Inglewood and cares about Inglewood, so that's why we're all here. Wanted to just quickly explain how we got to today. Over the last couple of years, neighbors in both Inglewood Place and Jackson Park had been feeling the pressure of development. Lower East Nashville, of course, has a lot of pressure, and Inglewood has seen its share of demos, new construction, and development. Neighbors also knew that both of their areas had merit to potentially be a nationally recognized historic district as well. These reasons caused the neighbors to approach me for support in pursuing conservation for Inglewood. I committed to help guide them through the process, and their task would be working to ensure communication with all neighbors, opportunities for input, of course, and a goal of neighborhood support of 75% or greater, as zoning and overlays are never to be taken lightly. The process began with a large community meeting well over a year ago to share knowledge and to gauge support. The neighbors dropped flyers on all of Jackson Park and Inglewood Place. Robin Ziegler from Metro Historic presented what the overlay would mean for us. And it certainly, with over 125 people in attendance at that meeting, 90% were in support. It certainly appeared Inglewood was very interested in this. However, at that point, the overlay was actually stopped because Metro did not have any staff in the historic department, as you probably know, to add any new overlays. That was the case until July of 2015. So once Metro Historic had that staff, Council Lady knows all too well, the process began again, and since it had been that long, we did another large community meeting. This was noticed, and flyers again were placed around this past fall. Once again, we had over 100 in attendance at that meeting, and we had near unanimous support at that meeting. So with that knowledge, I filed the bill. The next step would be the public hearing at Metro Historic, of course, when the notices finally go out, mailed to all property owners. So there's no question about making sure everyone has heard about it. And unfortunately, as always with these matters, some neighbors did not receive the flyers or did not feel communicated with from the first meetings. So, of course, that was frustrating to us and certainly not the way it was intended. After that historic hearing and some subsequent conversations in the neighborhood, I realized we did not have good consensus for Jackson Park. So what I said all along during that whole process was, We do not want to divide the neighborhood. While we have a lot of proponents for conservation in that area, we did not have broad consensus, which I mentioned was the 75% that I'd like to see. So I removed Jackson Park from consideration. With a new map has been drawn, and technically the substitute is filed now with the council, as you know. So this coming Tuesday, I will move that substitute actually on our public hearing night. So it is already prepared and ready. If any Jackson Park residents happen to come out today because of the notices, the signs were all up from the original bill, as you know. So this proposed overlay is now going to only be for Inglewood Place. So neighbors have continued to knock doors, speak with other neighbors, reach every possible property owner they could. We're attempting to over-communicate with the neighborhood, essentially. We had another meeting this past Tuesday night, just to continue conversations and answer any questions and concerns. Neighbors from both areas came and listened and asked questions. Robin from Metro Historic was on hand once again to speak about how conservation would affect each individual property owner. As I said before, my substitute ordinance references the new map, eliminating Jackson Park, and there are a few other small pieces from the overlay. I actually have two more pieces after this last meeting I'm looking at. There's a very small section on Oxford at the very top. We realized from those neighbors that it was new construction there, and I think there was maybe even a misunderstanding of how that got in the first place. We had thought Oxford residents up there wanted the overlay, so that would be an amendment I would do on third. And then the other part on Inglewood Circle, we added that early on because of neighborhood request. It was not in the original national Inglewood Place consideration. So our understanding was neighbors there did want to be part of the overlay. I'm looking at it to see if we are a little more divided on that stretch, the two streets down there on the far right. And if we are, I'd amend to remove that as well. So in the end, I have to make the decision. Sorry, back up. I also want to mention there are some neighbors outside of the boundaries that are opposed, and certainly some outside the boundaries that want to be included. In the end, I had to make the decision based on the property owners in the boundaries. Everybody's opinion in my council district matters to me, but to decide on the overlay, I'm going with the percentages inside the overlay district. All in all, finally, I feel this process has been a good one. I think we've had really great debate, spirited debate and conversation about conservation and overlays in general. We have certainly made compromises along the way, as you can see. And I've tried to hear everyone and make the best possible decisions for Inglewood, given the historic housing stock that we have, the clusters of contributing and non-contributing structures, and the differing opinions in these two large areas of Inglewood. The surveys that have been attained in the public meetings we've had still speak to the proponents in this core Inglewood Place area wanting to move forward. The neighbors have presented of over 60% of residents reached. Their numbers are showing close to 90% in support, or approximately 90% in support. As I have said all along, I do not wish to divide the neighbors. And if we have broad consensus, we will continue to move forward. That is the reason we are here with you, having made it this far. Look forward to listening to more comments today, again, and hearing from all my constituents. As of this moment, the request is to recommend the bill to council as substituted, as I will be making the substitution, and I will continue to listen to neighbors and try to make the best decisions with the most consensus possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we open the public hearing, I'd like to see a show of people who are here in support, if you'd stand. Okay, thank you. And the people in opposition. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There's about, looks like about 8 in opposition. I'll listen to everybody that wants to speak, but the ones that are in support, there's 8 in opposition. If there's 8 or 10 or 12 of you that would want to speak and support for the sake of getting you out of here early, y'all decide that among yourselves, and if it's agreeable. I'll take the ones that are in support. Does everyone want to speak, or is there just 10 or 12 of you that will speak for the organization? Okay, go ahead, give us your name and address.
Good evening, I'm Matthew Bond. I own and live at 3519 Gulf Street, which is in Inglewood Place in the overlay, and my wife and I have lived there for almost 5 years. When talking of an overlay, some people object. They say they don't want the government interfering with their property rights. I bought this house, I'm king of my castle. These are nice sentiments, but we don't live in castles. Each of us resides in a neighborhood. Our yards meet the yards of our neighbors. They smell the smoke from our grills. We enjoy the shade of their trees. With our neighbors, we share the same roads, the same power lines, the same water pipes, the same sidewalks, if we're lucky enough to have a sidewalk. Yes, we do have some individual property rights, but we also have a community responsibility to preserve those historic features that attracted us to the neighborhood in the first place. Individual property rights are precious little consolation if the neighborhood's historic character is lost. Our proposed conservation overlay, as Councilman Davis said, grew organically from our neighbors in response to a red tide of new buildings that threatened to poison the heritage of each street. We need to slow down the demolition and bring some reason and consideration to the new construction so that it joins rather than violates the identity of Inglewood Place. I have attended almost all of the large public meetings concerning this overlay. The many of us who are for it are residents who love the historic beauty of Inglewood Place and feel that the neighborhood's right to shape its own future overrides the urges of the housing industry to conduct unrestricted business here. The argument pits historic beauty against quick money. I have all due respect for money. I earn my own and I'm pleased to see others do the same. And as we know, overlays frequently increase property values. But beauty is fragile, it's hard to create and easy to destroy. In any conflict between historic beauty and quick money, I must side with beauty. It needs our protection and support, and I hope that you all agree with me. Thank you.
Thank you.
We're all in favor of beauty. My name is Kerry Rogers. I live at 1310 Howard Avenue. My wife and I have been there for about 30 years. When we first moved there, we were the youngest couple on the block. That's not so true today. We moved there because it was affordable housing in a historic neighborhood, although at the time we just called it an old house. Today, like us, it's historic. We're supporting this overlay because it's responsible development. It's not anti-development, as you know. It's not changing the base zoning. All of you know that. You've heard this before. I can change my house and make it better. My neighbors who own historic houses can do the same. If their house is non-historic, they can still make changes to it and they can build a new house as long as it fits into our neighborhood. And we've had responsible development on our street for most of that 30 years. There have been new houses built and they fit into our neighborhood. Today you can't tell they haven't been there as long as mine. And that's all we want, the kind of responsible neighborhood development we've had in East Nashville for most of those 30 years. So I live in the overlay district. You can see a lot of green shirts here of people who also live in that district, and we just ask you to support the historic overlay tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Keith.
No more clapping, please. We want to hear from the people, and just be very quiet if you would. Go ahead.
My name is Keith Spadafino, and I live at 1413 Shelton Avenue, which is within the amended overlay district. And my wife and I and family have lived in Inglewood for 18 years. We support this proposed overlay because it strikes a reasonable balance between growth and preservation. Nothing about the overlay prohibits the construction of a new home if it replaces a non-contributing home or a historic home that is in such bad condition that it cannot be saved. Moreover, this overlay does not prevent additions to historic homes or the building of accessory structures. While this overlay guides the design of new construction, it does not dictate property use. Inglewood Place did not become the neighborhood that we love today because it froze in time 50 years ago. Growth will always be integral to a strong, vibrant community. What this overlay does, however, is afford us the opportunity to guide new development in a way that honors Inglewood Place's past without compromising its future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Maggie Troutman. I live at 1302 McChesney Avenue, and I've lived there for 24 and a half years in the designated amended Inglewood Place neighborhood. I moved there because it was a beautiful neighborhood. It still is. It was also one of the first neighborhoods started in 1908 in Inglewood, and I'd like to preserve the heritage that is there and is being kept by the people who love the neighborhood. The new bills that are coming in right now are not exactly supporting that, and we just want this to have some reference of guidelines to keep our neighborhood in the same heritage that it was built. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Nick DiGiuseppe. I live at 3512 Kennedy Avenue, which is within the boundaries of the amended overlay. I'll make it quick. As a newer transplant to Inglewood Place, as Kerry was saying, he's older. I'm a lot younger to the neighborhood. I'm in favor of the overlay mainly because we need to slow down the presumption that once sold, any older home in the neighborhood is going to be torn down rather than preserved. Inglewood Place offers a diverse mix of houses both in size and style. That was what attracted me to the neighborhood about 4.5 years ago. And, with that, it comes with many smaller, more affordable homes that are becoming increasingly rare within this booming town for first-time home buyers, young professionals, as well as DIYers like myself who are eager to take on the task of restoring and keeping up a historic home. Let me say, at 70 years old, the house, runs me dry in my pocket and my wallet, but, that's what I love about it, is the charm of it, and that's part of the neighborhood. For these reasons, I support the overlay. Hopefully the green shirts behind me, which I would call them all friends and neighbors, help to speak to that, and I hope that you will vote to approve it.
Thank you.
Hi, guys. Thanks for having me. My name is Judd Fuller. I'm nervous. I apologize. My wife and I live at 1422 Shelton Avenue within the overlay. We bought our house about 10 years ago, and when we first saw it, it was a beautiful Tudor-style house on this wonderful tree-lined street, and we bought it because it was a beautiful Tudor-style house on a tree-lined street. It had that character that we wanted. We've lived in some great cities, New York, Boston, Toronto, Canada. We've been here for 10 years now. This is by far and away our favorite city to reside in. And I'm proud to live here in Nashville, even prouder to live on the street with these great friends and neighbors. And I'm incredibly passionate about keeping our neighborhood in the character that it is. Not against growth and change, that's inevitable in our society. When I hit that big scratch ticket, I want to improve my house, trust me. But I'll do it in a reasonable way that follows these guidelines, because I love my street and I love my neighborhood. And I've had a couple of neighbors who have improved their houses in a wonderful way where it maintains the character. That's all I'm saying. I know it's an emotional argument. I know people are fond of saying that, but I get pretty dang emotional when it comes to matters of my home. So this is my home now, and I'm proud to say that. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name's Ivan Chester. I live at 1316 McChesney Avenue in the amended overlay zone. And briefly, I just wanted to mention raising family in the neighborhood. It's becoming increasingly more expensive because of property values. Some of the homes in this zone are smaller, historic contributing homes, and I feel like it's important for us to maintain these smaller historic contributing homes because they are less expensive, so people like me and my wife and my kids can move in, raise our family in this beautiful neighborhood with, like our neighbor said, the tree-lined streets, the beauty. We're such close neighbors, so I just want to preserve that, the smaller houses that are historic, for people like me to come in, raise our kids. Kids are expensive, and dagnabbit, y'all know that. So I just want to preserve the smaller historic homes. That way they don't get knocked down and very large homes get put up that we cannot afford. That's my point. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name's Melissa Bond, and I live at 3519 Gulf Street, which is within the amended overlay boundaries. Almost a year ago, I volunteered to start leaving flyers with my neighbors to inform them about the informational meetings that we were discussing earlier. When it came time to actually knock on the doors of those neighbors with whom we may not have discussed the overlay, my involvement with the efforts to implement the overlay became more passionate. Elderly, longtime residents who had been unable to get out and attend the meetings were excited to meet me and grateful that I was delivering a form that they could fill out to show their support, even though they couldn't come to those meetings or had the ability to send emails. Families invited me into their homes. They invited me around their yards. They were proud of the work they were doing to improve their homes. They were doing it with a desire to maintain the character of the established community. This was their desire as residents. We are asking that we implement formal guidelines to assist us in planning our renovations and to ensure that others that build in our area do so in a way that preserves the identity of Englewood. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Rebecca Freeman. I live at 1304 McChesney. It's within the boundaries of the amended overlay district. I grew up on McChesney. I wandered away to Laughlin Springs for a few years in my young adult life, but I found my way home, and I've lived on McChesney since 1991. I'm going to repeat some of the things I think that the Councilman Davis said. Over the last month, a group of neighbors and myself have gone door to door within the amended overlay boundary area. We have been answering questions of our neighbors, engaging support for the conservation overlay. We were able to connect with about 60% of the residents so far. And over 90% of those people who completed a survey signed a survey in support of the implementation of the overlay for Englewood Place. Now, I believe that the surveys and the process that we've gone through that Councilman Davis described, the 3 community meetings held at Lytton Gym in 2014, 2015, and now in 2016, show the support of the community. An overwhelming majority of people from the neighborhood in attendance at those meetings voted in favor of the overlay. And I would ask you to respect the informed wishes of the Englewood Place citizens to implement this conservation overlay. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in support that has anything they'd like to add that hadn't been said? Okay, anyone wishing to speak in opposition, if you'd line up at the microphone.
Good evening. My name is Nathan Weinberg. Live at 3944 Moss Rose Drive in Englewood. And I think first I want to say that I'm actually really sort of touched by everything that the people who are for this conservation overlay said. I think they make a lot of really valid points about preserving the fabric of their community. I'm a member of the Englewood community. I'm not a member of this community. I do own property in this community. My concern is actually for people that chose this neighborhood to raise a family, to start a family, and put a tremendous amount of their assets, disposable income, into buying a piece of property with the goal someday of growing their family into it. And while this is the least restrictive piece of historic zoning available, and I applaud Councilman Davis for really evaluating all the options here, I think that it remains potentially catastrophic for people that were counting on the ability to add on to their homes. And so my concern is really for those people. I agree that Englewood is a beautiful neighborhood that requires a lot of attention. I am a real estate developer, full disclosure, and I like to think that my company has done a very good job of trying to preserve the character in these communities. So I will say I really am appreciative of everything that I heard the people in favor of this say, but I am concerned for the people that have put all of their energy and disposable income into these houses and may now be in a place where they can't grow the family they were hoping to. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Hi.
My name's Mike Gallagher, and I don't live in the proposed overlay, but I did when it was originally outlined. And I have two things to say. I wanted to thank Councilman Davis for hearing the voices of the people of Jackson Park, or at least that, he heard everybody's voices. And number two, my problem isn't with trying to preserve things. My problem is with the overlay itself. I think it's kind of a document that's a one-size-fits-all, and it doesn't really clearly outline what the homeowner and the resident, what rights they retain. There's lots of latitude and open-endedness for the historic staff and commission to decide, and it doesn't really clearly say what you retain as a homeowner. That's my issue with it. But I don't want to stop them if they want it, but I don't think it's a good document. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Troy Kinsel. I reside at 1425 Inglewood Circle North. I also have property on Kirkland and Inglewood Circle South, so I'm very familiar with that area. Just wanted to say that I am adamantly opposed to this because I believe it requires the homeowners to jump through hoops. As was just stated, I am certainly not opposed to preserving the historical nature, but I don't think this is the right way to do it. For instance, if there's a home that is across the street 4,000 square feet and you have another house next to you that's 12,000 square feet, you can't build anything bigger than, I believe it's 1,600 square feet. And this is a huge issue if you're in an 800 square foot place. In general, I think this will stop the growth of the neighborhood and will harm homeowners too. And one thing that really concerned me was Tuesday night I did attend the neighborhood meeting. And A, that was the first meeting I was able to attend, but B, I had never been surveyed about my concerns before or my viewpoint on it. That was the first time I'd ever seen the survey. Second of all, when I heard about the conservation overlay, it talked about adding additions to homes, and there were several restrictions and policies in place on the additions that had absolutely nothing to do with the existing home. And to me, that is wrought with inconsistencies as far as the way that the home can be made. I'm all about making Inglewood look beautiful, and I think it already does. But when you start having something look one way and the original house look something completely different, I think that is not the right way to go. So I'm concerned about the actual need for this overlay. I think there's got to be another way to do this. I think placing restrictions on existing homeowners and on these things is always a bad way to go. I agree with their idea, though, about the historical aspect. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm glad to get this opportunity to talk to you. My name is Curtis Stewart. I live at 150 Grassland Drive in Gallatin. I have 4 properties that's in this overlay. I've owned them for 30 years, but my dad bought them when I was 2 years old. I've taken care of them all these many years, and they have good value, as all these people's homes out here do. The value is very high in this area. I went downtown today. In this area, there's only 7 houses that have been torn down in the last 5 years. I don't think there's a need for an overlay. I mean, it seems like it's doing its job. As far as the meetings, I do not live in the area. I had no notification of any meetings the last 2 years that this group has had a lot of ammunition to use. The overlay the other night, as far as the meeting, it did not go very well. The PowerPoint didn't work. It wasn't explained very well. Most of the answers was it depends on your particular house. 60% of her answers was it depends on your house. So we didn't give a whole lot of information of what you could do. But this does hurt my value. And it's not something I'm brand new to the area. I mowed yards here when I was a kid. So if you change this today, it's going to change. I'm not going to do stuff with this property, but you're changing my value of my kids when they inherit this property, what they can do with it. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Jared Vestal. I live just on the border of this overlay at 1137A Kirkland. Literally, my property line touches, my backyard touches the Shelton property, and then it also, 2 doors to my left, looking at this map, is where it stops there at Windsor. I feel like, well, let me say, I came here from Chicago, moved to East Nashville, my wife and I. She teaches in the neighborhood, and we love the neighborhood. We love Englewood. We had come to East Nashville originally at 5th and Main and wanted to move further into the neighborhood to have our own property, to grow a family. It was affordable for us, and we've really enjoyed that neighborhood. As I listen to people that are for the amendment, they talk about 30 years they've been here and 50 years they've been here and these houses have been here, and that's part of what makes Englewood good, great, and all the changes that have happened over time. So I've got concerns over why now are we trying to restrict those changes, restrict that growth, and I feel like the group of people who were asked about it, who were surveyed, was fairly limited in scope. And I wrote you all a letter because I knew I was not going to be good at this part. So I hope you take the time to take a look at that and how I feel those surveys were conducted, the group of people who were conducted, those like myself who, just like they don't want to look at things across the street, I touch that border, and just because I'm not in the border by about 20 feet, I feel like that shouldn't have excluded my vote, and which brought the councilman to 75% to come here to present y'all. So, thank you.
Hi, my name is Tess Maniatis. I live at 3900 Oxford Street. I have also sent you all an email further explaining my points, probably better than I will up here today. I believe you all probably have that picture on your screen, that little divot on Oxford that Councilman Davis had described earlier as, I believe, now being outside. However, I would agree with the first speaker in that I still am a member of this neighborhood. Even if we are taken off of the map, I still smell their barbecues. It's still our backyard. We still see it as I drive down my street away from home. This is my community, even if we are taken from that map. And so I believe my voice is one that I hope you still consider even if I am taken off. I first would like to state why my husband, who's about to speak, and I moved here from New Orleans 5 years ago. We chose the Englewood area because we felt like it was the closest to New Orleans that we had. We wanted a big character. We wanted a lot of diversity. We thought it was kind of like the Maroney, and that it was up and coming, and it would be fun to be in, and all these neat restaurants we could walk to, and that's why we chose it. We chose it both for the historic aspects, but also the changing. And so we rented for 4 years. Full disclosure, it took us an extra, I think, 6 to 9 months probably to get a down payment to be able to afford a home in this area. We felt like that was a good gamble because it is an up and coming, it's a growing area. And I very much fear that that gamble will be lost if we stagnate the growth like I think this overlay will. I also would like to state that while I'm extremely appreciative to Councilman Davis for taking us off, I would like to point out those 5 houses, I think it shows how misinformed some of this map is. 3 of them were new, 1 was completely down to studs, so why were we considered historic in the first place? All my neighbors I spoke to had no idea. I went on their doors, I asked them to write our councilman, and I just don't think the information has been there. Same with the other areas. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Matt Maniatis, and I really have 2 issues I want to talk about here. I oppose this overlay because, number one, I don't think that anybody had enough notice of what was going on. The first time I heard about this was 2 weeks ago, roughly, and we've been in the neighborhood for about 5 years and at that home for 1 year. How I did find out was a Preserve Englewood person knocked on my door, asked me if I wanted to sign a petition in favor of the overlay. At least that's the feeling that I got. It was, hey, we're here for the overlay. I didn't even know that that was the official survey for Metro, or that these were going to go through a group that was for the conservation in order to then forward it off to Metro as well. So it was going to be funneled through a group that was, biased in one way or the other. I asked my neighbors, did they know about this? They didn't know about it. So I think there's definitely an issue with notice. Second, I don't think any of these homes that are going to be affected are the people who are for this overlay, because they can do whatever they want with their home. They're actually saying, hey, you other person, I don't want you to do this thing to your house. And I think that's very much against my property rights. I'm a new homeowner, and I think everybody else that's a new homeowner thinks, okay, great, we just got a house. Where can we go from here? Maybe want to add on. Now we're going to have to listen to some other guidelines that didn't exist when we bought the house. Like my wife said, it's a gamble, and we're pretty new in the game. Who knows how it's going to turn out? So I'm very much against this overlay. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no one else wishing to speak, I declare the public hearing closed. And oh, Councilman, if you'd like to, I'm sorry.
Not much but I just want to say thanks again to everyone for coming out. I mean, you've heard some good points, and I think, I did my very best on this as far as communication, trying to get meetings together, trying to circle people up, trying to make compromises, trying to just make sure we were doing this the proper way. So I hope you feel that, and again, I hope you can move us forward and let me make substitutes and then a possible amendment on third reading. Thank you.
The public hearing is now closed. Council Lady.
It's my second time to start, but I'm okay with that. I appreciate all the people who came to speak. I just want to respond a little bit to the concerns that this will stagnate growth or hurt the value of the property. My remembrance of the 2012, was that when we did it? Reassessment was that the hot areas of town, maybe coincidentally, but maybe not, tended to be the areas that already have historic districts, including my part of town. So I would challenge someone to come up with statistics that actually bear that out. What my experience has been is that the historic overlays around town have seen tremendous increases in value. So I think that is an important concern to worry about, but I'm not sure that the facts bear that out. And it seems like from what I have heard, there's strong support. The opposition does seem to be more from outside of the area, from within. I believe that the council members followed a good process to do the best with public engagement. It's impossible to get everybody in at the beginning, and usually by the end they're there, and you adjust as you need to. And I appreciate his willingness to make those adjustments. So knowing that he's going to be responsive to what he continues to hear, I would support this.
As the representative of the Planning Commission on the Historic Zoning Commission, I got to hear this a couple of times, and one thing I did want to point out that we are not, and correct me if I'm wrong, but we are not approving the design guidelines themselves tonight. That is the authority of the Historic Zoning Commission. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, great, thanks. Yeah, this is a great neighborhood that I frequent often, and almost bought a big house over there once. But Nashville Next speaks about preserving character and the unique character of Nashville, and I think there's certain areas of town that really define what's unique about Nashville, and so I'm in full support of this. It's a great neighborhood. I think it only helps property values. One of the comments I made at the Historic Zoning Commission was relative to preserving these areas do prevent some growth in our community that Nashville Next talks about in order to preserve what's unique about the area. And so I think it's important for those of us who want to preserve what's really unique and special about Nashville to also embrace the idea that that the trade-off may be growth in other areas, and especially along our corridors, such as Gallatin Pike. And we're already seeing a lot of pushback on growth along corridors. So I use this opportunity to just remind council members that I hope places like Gallatin Pike will be opportunities for us to grow, and it speaks to affordability as well as the consultant that looked at our affordable inclusionary housing policies pointed out. Downzonings and historic overlays. He wasn't opposed to them. He just pointed out that they don't help with affordability across our county. So I think we should recognize that and recognize that that there is some effect to that. So again, I'll be in full support. We had unanimous, is Robin here, unanimous support from all the historic zoning commissioners as well.
Councilwoman and Commissioner G have stated, I think, really eloquently the reasons to be in favor of this. One thing to remember, and it is a little weird for someone to tell you what you can do with your property, and it is something that it can be off-putting. I think the councilman did a really good job about excluding those properties, excluding those neighborhoods that really didn't have a clear consensus about what to do, and something to be mindful of is exactly what Councilwoman stated, that this really can be something beneficial for the property, even if you think that it may harm your property values. I'm not sure that that is the case, and this may be a blessing that turns out to be something that you weren't expecting. So I would be in favor of this, and I think it's a great idea.
I don't live in a historic zoning overlay. I almost do, but we didn't make it. I think it was the vinyl siding. Or the proximity to Freedman's, I don't know. But whatever the case, Council Lady Hauser didn't include us. But I would be opposed to this if it was the whole city. I mean, we need to grow. We need to have a lot of opportunity for different kind of housing stock. But and then there's the problem of Manuel Zeitlin or Hunter G. could always design a great house that wouldn't fit here. Seriously, that's a problem. If we had a whole county that Manuel couldn't operate in, I wouldn't like that, or you. But we're not doing that. We're talking about just a small part of the county, even though we have several of these, all of which, frankly, have been huge successes, not just in terms of property values, but in terms of feeling of community and a closeness that has been enhanced by this overlay. So I think we have a track record. We are not sort of starting out looking at how this works. And almost, with the one exception, every time a community has come together and gotten the support of the Historic Zoning Commission, we have approved it. And every one of those that we've approved, I think, has worked out. And you don't hear anyone wanting to take it off. So I'm in support of this. I will never sit on this.
Thank you, Chairman. I first want to say just to the councilman, I appreciate and I sense that just a lot of care and passion in what you do, and I know it takes a lot of time and effort, and I just want to say thank you for doing that. Just a couple of questions that I kind of picked out from some of the opposition. The first was the idea that it limits additions. Can you just kind of maybe talk about just that general premise about limiting additions? And then
Residing. Certainly, everything is limited in some respects. There are design guidelines that are followed, and additions should be appropriate for the house. And I know, as one speaker said, no one likes to have that answer of, it depends, but it does. And to my mind, that's one of the beauties of the design guidelines, is that the commission can address every unique situation instead of having rules that may not make sense. So, yes, of course, they review additions, new houses, new garages, demolition.
But there's not a outright ban on additions or new garages?
No, of course not.
Or okay.
There are design guidelines to follow.
Okay, excellent. And then the other piece, wait, don't go yet. The other question that I had was, one of the speakers said that there was only 7 houses within the district that have been torn down in the last 5 years. Do we know the demolition permits, or do
I don't. No, we don't look up that because it's really not relevant to the question.
Okay.
What we look at is how many historic properties are there. And I believe the consultant, don't quote me on this, but it was around 80% historic, and that's what we look at.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
I appreciate that.
Public hearing's closed.
I think, like I said earlier, the councilman did a great job. I wanted to ask those questions that seemed to be highlights of the opposition. I think that for this area, I'm very familiar with it. It makes sense, and I want to say thank you for all the neighbors for coming out and working so hard on this. I know it takes a lot of work, but I'll be in support of it.
Jessica.
Well, I am sensitive to the concerns of the neighbors that are the people that spoke against this, and obviously there is some concern in the unknowns, and over time it will be important to kind of get some more clarification, and experience will lead to that clarification. I have lived in 2 historic neighborhoods in East Nashville, and definitely have not had a problem with property values going up, as in going down, right? I've had a problem with them going up. My property taxes going up. So I think the concern over potential of value is hopefully something that will not play out. I drove around kind of South Inglewood and Inglewood earlier today, and I was sort of floored at how we're recreating the fabric of these streets. We have whole streets at this point that have been completely rebuilt with a whole new style of housing, and I just, 20 years from now, is that what we're going to want to see in our neighborhoods? If we have neighborhoods that have stood the test of time for more than 100 years, I think we need to do what we can to keep that in place, and so I strongly support doing that.
Jennifer.
It's 5 minutes till 8. I'll take 2 hours of your time. There's nothing I can add other than to say I've lived in Chicago. I married in New Orleans. I lived on Russell Street in East Nashville for 8, almost 9 years. When I bought my property at 602 Russell Street, I did not know it was in a historic neighborhood, and was told I could not paint my front porch a color I wanted to paint my front porch, and was confused. So I understand the concerns, and that being from Lawrenceburg, Tennessee, no one tells me what I can and can't do with my own property, and I learned quickly that that's not necessarily the case. But the Metro Historic Commission is amazing to work with, and as a community, you've come together. I applaud, again, the process. That's what I love about Nashville and East Nashville specifically, working with your councilman, who you are very lucky to have. Work with Metro Historic Zoning when they come up with the guidelines, consult them, and any concern about your property value. Again, I sold my place in East Nashville, and I live in Whites Creek now. You're lucky to have a community that does this. One thing I don't know the answer to this question, it may not matter, but is there a process for making people aware of the overlay when they sell the property? Does anyone know the answer to that question? Because I bought my house, and honestly, I had no idea until I went out and pressure washed my front porch, and then was told I could not paint it the color that I wanted to paint it.
Actually, we don't review paint color.
Well, maybe it was just my neighbor. My neighbor didn't like the color. That was my neighbor that said he didn't like them.
No, and we would love that. There are some states where it's a requirement that the realtor is required to tell someone whether or not it is, but it's not here in Tennessee. We do try to combat that by having a realtor course. So I think we've offered it twice here in Nashville. Very well received, and it's one way to educate realtors about how to find out before they sell it.
Well, and that's just one thing for the community. You've been on top of this now. As we learned in Edgefield the hard way, you have to stay on top of it. So this is one step. You get the rest of your pieces, and then you're the policemen that have to make sure it sticks. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I've got one question for the councilman, and I think it's something I asked maybe at the Historic Zoning Commission too, but with respect to the Gallatin Pike corridor, have you looked at the properties abutting those Gallatin Pike properties? One thing I pointed out at the Historic Zoning Commission is that Gallatin Pike, like many of our pikes, are challenged with redevelopment because of the depth. Many of the properties along Gallatin Pike used to be residential properties themselves, so there's not much depth to allow for redevelopment of any substantial size, and so I think that's one of the reasons we haven't seen a lot of redevelopment along Gallatin Pike like we have in other corridors. So I had asked the councilman to take a close look at some of those properties that abutted that edge and see if they were, it was important to keep them in the overlay, and I just wanted to see if that.
Yeah, I mean, I was just I didn't really analyze the zoning of it all, or
sure,
the parcels, but I did take a drive. One thing I wanted to point out on Stratford, the parcel off is where we have added some townhomes, for example, because one parcel behind Gallatin was zoned OR20, and that's something I'm more than open to is looking at the zoning a little closer on all those one parcel offs. Obviously, I don't want to forcefully lose anything contributing necessarily, but we might have some more opportunities. I do need to take another close look at it. We after the SP, as I mentioned at Historic, we went through a big rezoning of Gallatin Road. We're all MUG, MULA, and then a little bit of OR basically up on the very northern end. And this is actually in the stretch that Doug will remember. I talked about this a lot when we went through it. It added a lot of MULA on a portion of Gallatin where we could add some restaurants and we could add some other things and density, of course. And there's been some, it's on the other side of Gallatin, but there's been some townhomes being built that are pretty impressive. Some people are starting to take the risks on Gallatin, so it's good to see. But I'd love to continue to look one parcel off if there's opportunities.
Great, thank you, Councilman.
Councilman, I think that, let me say this, Hunter, in support of what you said, that all along Gallatin Road, probably from East High all the way out to probably Riley Parkway, there's not much depth to those, and that some of that has been zoned, but for a developer to go in there and buy that up and start developing, it's just not going to happen. And I think that it's a prime corridor, just like Charlotte has been and Franklin Road has been. So I'd urge you and the other council members along Gallatin Road to take a strong look at that.
Yeah, we are going to need to, and my office was on Gallatin for many years, and we had a shallow lot, and that was definitely a thing.
It's going to restrict that development and gentrification along there. Hunter, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, my last comment, and I'll make a motion after that, is the concern about the Historic Zoning Commission being too restrictive, and I've sat on for that commission for I think going on 5 years now, and we have people that say they're too restrictive, but I also had someone at the sledding hill at Shelby last week tell me that we rubber stamp everything that comes through. So what that tells me is I think the commission's got a pretty balanced approach with how we deal with every case, and I think they're doing a great job. So with that, I'll make a recommendation or a motion that we approve staff recommendation.
Second. Got a motion second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. And Hunter, while you're on got your mic on, give us an update on the historic zoning. I think you just did a little bit.
Yeah, I don't have any additional updates. Thanks.
Okay. Greg, got anything from Parks Recreation? Council Lady, anything from the courthouse we need to know about?
I'll just say briefly that a bill has been filed dealing with historic zoning, and I have signed it, and we will defer it, so, with regarding to the inclusionary zoning. So that will be coming before council and then coming back to this group for further work.
Any other comments?
I do have a couple of comments, if I may. And we were able to take the legislation and split it up in the way that you had, the commission had also got into a discussion about splitting it up and having a portion of it as to address the entire, the incentives for workforce and affordable housing, and then all the other changes to the zoning code. I know that we spent quite a bit of time, I think somewhere in the neighborhood of 4 hours, getting to that. And so working with staff, we were able to do that, separate the two. Again, there's Carrie Logan doing the bulk of the work there, but we were able to offer two bills that have been signed by the council. And now what we hope to do is put together a group of commissioners and council members and members of the Barnes Fund and others, and put together another stakeholders group to work forward with those two pieces of legislation. So I think there's a lot of work, but
I just wanted to add that you all have copies of what we submitted at your desk today, the entire packet with the letter and both bills and exhibits.
And do we have any idea when we'll see the feasibility study?
They are diligently working on the feasibility study. There has been a lot of sensitivity testing that's continued even after we submitted the proposal to the commission, and we are waiting for some of that sensitivity testing to be complete before they finish the feasibility study.
I was just going to say, before we form that committee, I think it would be great to have the list of other recommendations that I know he's been thinking about and considering and gathering over the course of that first process, because I think that will be really helpful for thinking about the entire package of housing policies we need to look at.
Okay. A couple other quick things. One thing that we've wanted to work on for some time is actually getting into the schools. And so we've seen a little bit of progress there. Craig Owensby and Jennifer Higgs in our GIS and mapping department, they've met with Metro schools, and we're going to start working with some of the, I think, junior high schools to have programs regarding planning and just kind of introduce them to what we do. And I thought that was a good step forward. Huh? That's right, Hearts and Minds. And then we have two new planners that we're able to hire in land development, so we're pretty excited about that. Two planner twos, and we still have a planning tech position that's open that we need to fill. And the community plans has begun to do their interviews for a planner two position there as well. So progress on that front. And nobody's quit that I know of in the last week. That's good.
Other comments?
Doug, I have a question. Did we take care of, or do we need to take care of helping you extend the contract with the consultant? Did we do that?
You took care of it.
Okay.
We're working on that now with the consultant at this time.
Thank you.
Yeah, I asked you to instruct me to do that, and you did so.
Other comments?
No.